When we think about life on Earth, it is easy to picture it in fragments, as separate and unconnected forms. We notice the flutter of a bird's wings, the slow movement of a snail, the silent reach of trees stretching upward toward the light, or the invisible world of microbes we cannot see with our eyes. Each seems different, distinct, and almost unrelated, yet there is a gentler, deeper truth beneath these appearances. All of life is bound together, not as scattered pieces, but as branches of a single living story. Scientists have given this great image a name, calling it the tree of life. Like a tree that begins with a single root and then rises into countless limbs and leaves, so too does life begin from a shared origin, branching and diversifying across billions of years, shaping every living thing that has ever existed. This idea offers both scientific clarity and a sense of quiet wonder, for it allows us to see ourselves not as separate creatures, but as part of a grand, continuous unfolding of existence. The metaphor of the tree is a simple one, yet profoundly accurate. A trunk rises upward, then divides into branches, which in turn divide again and again, until the tips are scattered with countless leaves. Each leaf can be imagined as a single species, unique and individual, while the branches represent groups of related species, and the trunk, the ancestral root from which all descended. To stand before such an image in the mind is to recognize that every living being we know, from the smallest bacterium to the blue whale, shares a connection as real as the veins of a leaf connected to the branch that bears it. The tree of life, in this sense, is not just a diagram found in a textbook, but a gentle reminder of kinship, of unity amid diversity. When scientists first began to consider the diversity of life, they often thought in terms of separation. Different animals, different plants, different ways of living. But over centuries, as observations grew and microscopes opened windows into hidden worlds, a new awareness emerged. Beneath the surface differences, there were similarities too strong to ignore. Every living thing was found to be made of cells, those small but vital compartments capable of growth, reproduction, and the flow of energy. This realization brought a shift in perspective. Life was not a collection of isolated forms, but variations on a single theme. The cell, simple or complex, was a universal foundation, present in all beings. It was as though the tree's trunk had been discovered, hidden beneath the soil, and the recognition of that shared foundation allowed scientists to see that unity was as important as difference. The story of the tree of life is also a story of time, for its branches are not static. They grow, they divide, and they change across deep stretches of history. Imagine the Earth more than 3.5 billion years ago, a world far different from the one we know. Its surface was young, oceans still forming, the air without the oxygen we now breathe. In this setting, the first roots of life began to appear. They were not plants or animals, nor even anything we might recognize as familiar, but simple cells, tiny compartments of chemistry that learned to copy themselves, to use energy, and to persist. Out of these early beginnings, every later form of life would emerge. This idea is not speculation, but supported by a wealth of evidence. The shared language of DNA, the presence of similar metabolic pathways across organisms, and the persistence of molecular machinery that remains unchanged even today. To imagine such a common origin is to see the tree's trunk emerging, strong and unbroken, from which all later branches would arise. The beauty of the tree of life is that it explains both unity and diversity at once. On one hand, it tells us why all living things share certain fundamental traits. They are inherited from the earliest ancestors. On the other, it explains the breathtaking variety of forms, as each branch has taken its own path, shaped by environments, by adaptation, and by the quiet force of evolution. Over billions of years, some branches flourished and spread into countless smaller twigs. while others remain small, or even ended, like branches that wither and fall. Extinct species remind us that the tree has many lost leaves, whose memory remains only in fossils and fragments of rock. And yet, the living tree continues to grow, with new species emerging, new forms adapting to the Earth's ever-changing conditions. The tree is not frozen in the past. It is alive and unfolding even now. To appreciate the tree of life is also to recognize our place within it. It is tempting for humans to imagine themselves as somehow set apart, standing outside the branches, unique and unmatched. But in truth, we are one branch among many, part of a lineage that traces back through primates, mammals, and much deeper still, into the oceans and the ancient microbial world. The DNA in our cells is written in the same alphabet as that of bacteria, fungi, and plants. The energy that powers us is transferred through molecular systems shared across nearly all forms of life. Even the hemoglobin in our blood and the chlorophyll in leaves are distant cousins, variations on similar molecular structures that reveal a shared ancestry. To see ourselves in this context is not to diminish our uniqueness, but to enrich it, for it shows that human life is not an isolated miracle, but a continuation of life's broader story. There is also a gentle humility in viewing life this way. The tree of life tells us that we belong not only to the family of mammals or primates, but also to the wider community of all organisms. The microbes in the soil, the moss on stones, the coral reefs in the oceans, the insects in the air, all are part of the same story, connected through threads of descent. This realization shifts how we perceive the natural world. Rather than separate domains of creatures placed for our use, they appear as relatives, distant but real, part of the same unfolding. The kinship is not metaphorical but written into our very molecules, into the structure of our cells, into the inheritance that links generation after generation across billions of years. When scientists draw the tree of life on paper, it appears as branching lines, spreading outward like veins or rivers. Each fork in the line represents a divergence, a moment when populations split and followed different evolutionary paths. Some of those forks are ancient, like the division between bacteria, archaea, and eukaryotes, which represent the deepest splits in life's history. Others are more recent, like the branching of early humans into different species within the genus Homo. Each branch point is a reminder that evolution is not a ladder, not a climb toward some ultimate form, but a branching process, with many outcomes, many experiments in survival, each shaped by chance, environment, and adaptation. The image of the tree has been used by cultures long before science gave it this particular meaning. In myths and traditions, trees often stand as symbols of life, of connection between heavens and earth, of roots and branches binding all things together. It is perhaps fitting that modern biology, through its evidence and theories, has returned to this ancient symbol to describe the reality of life itself. For just as a tree binds together roots unseen and leaves spread wide, so too does the tree of life connect the invisible past to the visible present, the smallest cell to the largest animal, the simplest organism to the complexity of human thought. As we begin this journey through the tree of life, we do so gently, step by step, letting each branch be examined in turn. The story is vast, stretching across billions of years, yet it unfolds with a certain calm rhythm, one change building on another, one branch dividing, one lineage continuing forward. To listen to this story is to be reminded of the stillness beneath life's complexity, the patient unfolding of forms that together create the world we know. In this way, the tree of life is not only a scientific explanation but also a quiet reflection, an invitation to see unity in diversity, continuity in change, and connection in every corner of the living world. 2. What defines life? To understand the tree of life, It helps first to pause and reflect on the very question of what life is. The idea may feel obvious at first glance. We know that animals move, that plants grow, that fungi spread quietly through soil, and that tiny microbes swim in drops of water. But beneath this intuitive sense lies a deeper inquiry. What separates the living from the non-living? What features do all living organisms share, no matter how small, how large, or how unusual? This is not a trivial question, for in answering it we find the unifying traits that bind all organisms together as part of the same great tree. It is in these qualities, simple yet profound, that the essence of life reveals itself. Scientists have long studied the patterns that define living things. Despite the immense variety of organisms, from bacteria no larger than a speck of dust to towering redwood trees that stretch hundreds of feet toward the sky, life can be recognized through a set of fundamental characteristics. These are not random or arbitrary. They are universal threads woven through every branch of the tree of life. Each organism, in its own way, carries these traits. When we look closely, we see that they form a gentle checklist of what it means to be alive. One of the most essential features of life is cellular organization. Every living organism is composed of one or more cells, and the cell itself is the basic unit of life. In a sense, cells are like the bricks of a great cathedral, the repeating building blocks that allow complexity to rise. Some organisms, like bacteria and archaea, consist of a single cell that carries out all necessary functions within its tiny volume. Others, like humans, are made of trillions of cells, each specializing in its role, yet all working together in coordination. Whether alone or in vast assemblies, cells provide structure, function, and continuity. They enclose life's chemistry within delicate membranes, holding the conditions stable enough for the processes of survival to unfold. Without cells, there is no life as we know it, and so this characteristic stands as one of the most unifying truths of biology. Closely related to this is the principle of order. Living things are not haphazard arrangements of matter, but organized systems, built with precision at every scale. Within a single cell, molecules form elaborate structures that carry out tasks with remarkable reliability. Organelles like mitochondria generate energy, ribosomes assemble proteins, and nuclei in eukaryotic cells store genetic information. In multicellular organisms, cells combine into tissues, tissues form organs, and organs align into systems that sustain the organism as a whole. Even ecosystems show this sense of order, with countless species interacting in webs of dependency. Life, at every level, demonstrates an intricate organization that distinguishes it from the randomness of inanimate matter. Another defining characteristic is sensitivity, or the ability to respond to stimuli. Life is not passive. Even the simplest bacterium can sense changes in its environment and move toward nutrients or away from harm. Plants bend toward sunlight, a process known as phototropism, adjusting their growth to capture more energy. Animals respond to sound, touch, or smell, navigating the world through complex senses. This capacity to perceive and react ensures that living organisms are attuned to their surroundings, able to survive by adjusting behavior, position, or physiology to changing conditions. Without sensitivity, life would be unable to endure, for the environment is never still. Growth and reproduction form another universal pair of traits. All living things grow, either by enlarging their cells, adding more cells, or both. This growth may be simple, as in a bacterium doubling in size before dividing, or complex, as in the transformation of a fertilized egg into a fully formed human being. Reproduction, meanwhile, ensures the continuity of life across generations. Some organisms reproduce asexually, making identical copies of themselves, Others engage in sexual reproduction, combining genetic material from two parents to create offspring that are unique. This passing of hereditary information, encoded in DNA, allows the traits of life to persist, while also introducing variation, the raw material for evolution. Growth and reproduction, taken together, ensure that life does not vanish with the passing of a single individual, but continues onward as part of the unbroken chain of existence. Energy utilization is another hallmark of life. Organisms cannot simply exist passively. They must take in energy and transform it into usable forms to fuel their activities. Plants, algae, and certain bacteria capture sunlight through photosynthesis, turning light into chemical energy. Animals and fungi consume organic material, breaking it down to release energy for movement, repair. Even at the smallest scale, cells require energy to maintain their internal balance, to transport molecules, and to carry out chemical reactions. The energy flows in cycles, with producers capturing it, consumers transforming it, and decomposers recycling it. But the need for energy unites all life. Without this constant stream, organisms would not be able to grow, respond, or reproduce. Perhaps the most profound trait of life is evolutionary adaptation. Life is not static, but changes over time. Organisms interact with their environment, and through the process of natural selection, traits that enhance survival and reproduction become more common. Over generations, populations shift, diverge, and sometimes give rise to entirely new species. This capacity to adapt explains the immense diversity of life we see today, as well as the continuity that ties all species to common ancestors. Adaptation is not merely about survival in a narrow sense. It is the reason the tree of life has branched into countless forms, from whales in the oceans to cacti in the desert. Evolution ensures that life is not frozen in one state, but an ever-flowing current, shaped by time and circumstance. Finally, there is the quiet principle of homeostasis. Despite fluctuations in the external environment, living organisms maintain relatively stable internal conditions. Your body regulates its temperature, keeping it within a narrow range, even as the weather outside changes. Cells control the balance of ions, nutrients, and water within their membranes, ensuring the delicate machinery of life continues to function. Plants regulate the opening and closing of stomata on their leaves to balance water loss with carbon dioxide intake. Homeostasis is the steady hand of life, the ability to preserve order within while the world outside shifts unpredictably. It is this balance that allows life to endure through extremes of heat, cold, or scarcity. When considered together, these traits, cellular organization, order, sensitivity, growth, reproduction, energy use, adaptation, and homeostasis, form the shared signature of life. Not every non-living system fails all these tests. Crystals, for example, can grow, and machines can consume energy, but only life displays the full set, integrated and sustained across time. These characteristics serve not as rigid rules but as guiding lights, helping us recognize the presence of life even in unfamiliar forms. The importance of identifying these traits goes beyond simple classification. They serve as reminders that all living things, no matter how different they appear, share a deep kinship. The bacterium in the soil and the oak tree above it, the cat in a window and the person watching it all, are bound by the same fundamental principles. To see these traits clearly is to recognize the threads that tie every organism back to the trunk of the tree of life. They are not just biological facts, but gentle affirmations of connection. And so, when we speak of what defines life, we are not merely making lists for textbooks. We are uncovering the roots of unity. We are seeing how the smallest cell shares its essence with the grandest creature, how the invisible and the visible are woven together by common principles. These traits are the reason we can speak of a single tree of life, rather than countless disconnected forms. They remind us that beneath diversity lies simplicity, and beneath complexity lies continuity. The tree of life, vast as it may be, grows from these shared foundations, and every branch, every leaf, carries within it the same defining patterns of existence. 3. Life's earliest roots. To follow the great tree of life back through its countless branches, one must eventually arrive at the beginning. Every branch, every leaf, every intricate form of life we see today, or find preserved as fossils in stone, traces back to the same ancient trunk, and that trunk itself reaches into the hidden soil of Earth's earliest history. The roots of life lie deep in time, far beyond the reach of memory, stretching back more than 3.5 billion years. It is here, in this distant world, that the first living systems emerged, fragile at first but persistent, setting in motion the long story that continues into our present day. The Earth at that time was a very different place from the one we now know. When the planet first formed, around 4.5 billion years ago, it was a harsh and volatile world. Its surface was molten rock, constantly reshaped by bombardments from space, volcanoes erupting, and a young sun that burned slightly weaker than today. Over time, the Earth cooled. Water vapor condensed, forming vast oceans that covered much of the planet. The atmosphere lacked oxygen, containing instead gases like carbon dioxide, methane, and nitrogen. The seas were rich in minerals, warmed by geothermal energy, and stirred by tides and lightning storms. To us, such an environment might seem inhospitable, but within it the conditions for life were quietly gathering. Scientists still debate the precise pathway by which life began. What is clear, however, is that the building blocks of life, amino acids, nucleotides, and other simple molecules were present in abundance. Experiments conducted in laboratories have shown that when a mixture of gases thought to resemble Earth's early atmosphere is exposed to sparks of energy, such as lightning, complex organic molecules can form. These molecules include many of the same chemical components found in living cells. It is possible that such chemistry occurred not just in the atmosphere but in the oceans, in shallow pools, or near hydrothermal vents on the seafloor. Other theories suggest that some of these molecules may have arrived from space, carried within comets or meteorites, which are known to harbor organic compounds. Whatever the exact origin, the essential ingredients of life were present, scattered across a young and restless planet. From these simple molecules, larger and more complex structures began to form. Chains of amino acids assembled into proteins. Nucleotides linked together into strands of RNA, a molecule capable of storing information and catalyzing reactions. Some scientists propose an RNA world, a time before DNA and proteins became dominant, when RNA molecules served both as carriers of information and as rudimentary enzymes. These self-replicating molecules, fragile yet persistent, may have been among the first sparks of true life. Once molecules could copy themselves, evolution had begun. Errors, variations in copying would produce diversity, and those variations better suited to survival in their environment would persist. The principle of natural selection, which we often associate with animals and plants, had its beginnings here, in the silent chemistry of ancient seas. At some point, these molecules gathered within protective boundaries. Lipid molecules, which naturally form small spheres when mixed with water, may have created simple membranes, enclosing the chemistry within. These protocells, not yet as sophisticated as modern cells, marked a profound step. Within their boundaries, reactions could be concentrated, shielded from the surrounding environment. Energy could be harnessed more efficiently, molecules could be copied more reliably, and the first semblance of cellular life began to take shape. Over time, These early cells grew more complex, developing the ability to use energy from the environment, to control the flow of materials across their membranes, and to replicate with greater fidelity. These were the earliest ancestors of all living organisms, the first true roots of the tree of life. Evidence for such ancient origins comes not only from experiments and theories, but also from the rocks themselves. Some of the oldest known fossils are microscopic structures found in rocks more than 3.5 billion years old. These structures resemble colonies of bacteria, preserved as thin filaments and layered formations known as stromatolites. Stromatolites, built by communities of microbes that trapped and bound sediment, still exist in certain places today, such as shallow coastal waters in Australia. To look at them is to see both the present and the distant past, for they represent one of the earliest forms of organized life that shaped the environment around them. One of the greatest transformations in Earth's history was brought about by these ancient microbes. Around 2.5 billion years ago, some of them evolved the ability to capture sunlight through photosynthesis, using it to produce energy and releasing oxygen as a byproduct. At first, this oxygen reacted with minerals in the oceans and rocks, but gradually it accumulated in the atmosphere. This event, known as the Great Oxidation, altered the planet profoundly. Oxygen, once absent, became abundant, reshaping the chemistry of the air and water. For many early organisms, oxygen was toxic, and they perished. But for others, it opened entirely new possibilities, allowing cells to harness energy far more efficiently. It was a turning point, one that allowed more complex forms of life to eventually arise. The earliest cells were prokaryotes, organisms without a nucleus. Bacteria and archaea, the two great domains of prokaryotic life, diverged from one another billions of years ago. They still dominate much of the Earth's biology, invisible yet essential, forming the unseen majority of living matter. From them, in time, arose eukaryotes, cells with nuclei and internal compartments. This transition was one of the most remarkable steps in evolution. Evidence suggests that it occurred through symbiosis, when one type of cell took up residence inside another. Mitochondria, the energy-producing structures within our own cells, appear to have originated as free-living bacteria that became permanent partners within larger host cells. Similarly, the chloroplasts that enable plants to photosynthesize were once independent organisms. This cooperative merging gave rise to a new kind of cell, more versatile and complex, from which multicellular life would eventually unfold. To imagine these earliest roots is to envision a world alive with invisible pioneers. They were not grand creatures but tiny cells, floating in oceans, clinging to rocks, or dwelling near volcanic vents. Yet their persistence transformed the earth itself. They changed the air, they shaped the seas, and they laid the foundations for every later branch of the tree of life. Their story is not separate from ours, for the molecules they used, the genes they carried, and the pathways they built remain within us still. Each human cell, each leaf on a tree, each bacterium in the soil, carries echoes of those first beginnings. Life's earliest roots remind us that great complexity can arise from the simplest of origins. From a handful of molecules came systems capable of self-replication. From fragile membranes came cells. From cells came communities, symbioses, and eventually multicellular organisms. Over billions of years, the tree grew from a single root into the countless branches we see today. The earliest roots are hidden in time, yet their presence is undeniable, for without them there could be no tree, no branches, no leaves, and no living beings to contemplate their history. To reflect on this beginning is to be reminded of the patience of nature. Life did not appear suddenly as it is now, but unfolded slowly, step by step, across unimaginable spans of time. Each stage built upon what came before, each innovation carried forward, refined, and reshaped by the quiet work of evolution. The roots may lie far beyond our sight, but their influence runs through every leaf of the tree of life, binding us all to that ancient, shared origin. 4. The three domains of life. As we trace the tree of life upward from its earliest roots, we encounter one of its most profound divisions. This division does not separate animals from plants or fungi from bacteria, but something deeper, something more fundamental. At the broadest level, all living things belong to one of three great domains: bacteria, archaea, and eukaryotes. These domains represent the earliest and most significant branching of life's history, lines that diverged billions of years ago and continue to define the structure of the living world today. To understand the tree in its entirety, one must pause here and look carefully at these three vast branches, for they are the foundation upon which all later diversity rests. For much of human history, scientists did not recognize this deep division. Early systems of classification were simpler, often separating the living world into just two categories: plants and animals. Later, as microscopes revealed the existence of tiny organisms, additional kingdoms were added, including fungi and protists. Yet even these categories were based largely on appearance and function rather than on the true evolutionary relationships between organisms. It was only in the late 20th century, with the study of molecular biology and genetic sequences, that scientists uncovered the full picture. By comparing the sequences of ribosomal RNA, a molecule found in all cells, biologists discovered that what had once been lumped together as prokaryotes in fact consisted of two fundamentally different groups, bacteria and archaea, alongside eukaryotes, which include plants, animals, fungi, and protists. This gave rise to the modern three-domain system, a model that more accurately reflects life's evolutionary branching. The first of these domains, bacteria, is perhaps the most familiar. They are among the earliest forms of life, with fossils resembling bacteria dating back more than 3.5 billion years. They are small, usually consisting of a single cell, and lack the complex internal structures of eukaryotic cells. Yet their simplicity is deceptive, for bacteria are astonishingly diverse and adaptable. They inhabit virtually every environment on Earth, from soil and water to the air we breathe and even the surfaces of our skin. Some are beneficial, forming symbiotic relationships with larger organisms, while others can cause disease. Many are essential to the functioning of ecosystems, recycling nutrients, breaking down organic matter, and even fixing nitrogen from the atmosphere into forms usable by plants. Without bacteria, the cycles of life would falter, for they are the unseen workers maintaining balance in the biosphere. The second domain, archaea, remained hidden in plain sight for centuries. At first glance, they appear similar to bacteria. They are also small, single-celled, and without nuclei. But beneath this superficial resemblance, they are fundamentally different. Their genetic sequences and the structure of their cell membranes reveal a separate lineage that diverged from bacteria billions of years ago. Many archaea are extremophiles, thriving in environments that would be hostile to most other forms of life. Some live in boiling hot springs, where water temperatures exceed the boiling point. Others dwell in highly saline lakes, where the salt concentration rivals or surpasses that of seawater. Still others flourish in oxygen-free environments such as deep-sea vents, producing methane as a byproduct of their metabolism. Though long overlooked, archaea represent a vast and unique branch of the tree of life, one that continues to surprise researchers with its diversity and resilience. The third domain, eukaryotes, is the one most familiar to us, for it includes all plants, animals, fungi, and a wide array of microscopic protists. Eukaryotic cells differ from those of bacteria and archaea in that they contain a nucleus, a membrane-bound compartment where DNA is stored and protected. They also possess other specialized structures, called organelles, that perform distinct functions. Mitochondria generate energy, chloroplasts in plants capture sunlight, and the endoplasmic reticulum assists in the assembly of proteins and lipids. This internal complexity allows eukaryotic cells to grow larger and to form multicellular organisms with specialized tissues and organs. It is within this domain that the great variety of visible life arose, from forests and coral reefs to birds, mammals, and ultimately humans. The recognition of these three domains reshaped biology in profound ways. No longer could scientists think of life as divided simply into plants and animals. Instead, the deepest division was found at the cellular and molecular level, in the very architecture of life itself. Bacteria and archaea, though both prokaryotic, represent distinct lineages that diverged early in Earth's history. Eukaryotes, in turn, appear to have arisen through a symbiotic merging of these earlier forms, with mitochondria and chloroplasts tracing their ancestry to once free-living bacteria. Thus, the tree's earliest great branching is not merely a matter of classification, but a reflection of the deep history of life's evolution, a history written in the structure of cells and the sequences of genes. The importance of this three-domain model goes beyond taxonomy. It reminds us of the immense time scale over which life has unfolded. The split between bacteria and archaea occurred billions of years ago, long before the rise of plants, animals, or even the simplest multicellular organisms. For most of Earth's history, life was entirely microbial. The vast, teeming diversity of single-celled organisms dominated the planet for billions of years before more complex forms emerged. Even today, microbes remain the most abundant and diverse forms of life, their numbers surpassing those of all plants and animals combined. They are not merely remnants of an ancient past, but active participants in the present, shaping the environment and sustaining the systems upon which larger organisms depend. The study of these domains has also opened windows into the possibility of life beyond Earth. When we see archaea thriving in boiling springs, in acidic pools, or in the crushing pressures of deep-sea vents, we are reminded that life is resilient, capable of flourishing in conditions once thought impossible. This expands our imagination when considering other worlds, such as the icy moons of Jupiter or Saturn, where subsurface oceans may harbor conditions not unlike Earth's extreme environments. If life could take hold in such unlikely places, here, might it not also exist elsewhere? In this way, the three domains of life do not only tell us about Earth's history, but also guide our search for life in the wider universe. To place ourselves within this picture is humbling. As eukaryotes, humans belong to one branch of one domain, which itself arose from ancient partnerships among earlier forms. Our cells carry the legacy of bacterial ancestors in their mitochondria, while our DNA reflects countless generations of evolutionary change. Yet we remain connected, not only to animals and plants, but to bacteria and archaea as well. Through the deep unity of the tree of life, we may seem distant from these microbes in appearance, but at the molecular level we share many of the same pathways, the same genetic code, and the same ancient heritage. The three domains of life, then, are not just categories on a chart. They are living reminders of the deep history of our planet, the branching of lineages across unimaginable spans of time, and the shared foundation of all organisms. They tell us that life is both unified and diverse, both ancient and continually unfolding. Each domain carries its own story, its own adaptations, its own contributions to the great web of existence, and together they form the broad, sturdy limbs of the tree of life, rising from the earliest roots and giving rise to the countless branches that spread outward into the present and beyond. 5. The domain of bacteria. Among the three great domains of life, the bacteria are perhaps the most ancient and in many ways, the most essential. They are small, often invisible to the naked eye, yet their influence is vast and enduring. If we were to weigh all the living matter on Earth, a large fraction of it would be bacterial. They inhabit every corner of the planet, from the highest atmosphere to the deepest ocean trenches, from the soil beneath our feet to the surfaces of our skin. They are present in numbers that defy comprehension, with estimates suggesting that a single handful of soil contains more bacterial cells than there are people who have ever lived. To consider the bacteria is to recognize the hidden foundation upon which the entire living world rests. Bacteria are structurally simple compared to eukaryotic cells, but their simplicity does not mean limitation. Each bacterial cell is a small capsule of life, enclosed by a protective wall and membrane, containing the machinery needed to grow, reproduce, and respond to the environment. They lack nuclei, with their DNA floating freely within the cytoplasm, usually as a single, circular chromosome. Many bacteria also carry small loops of DNA called plasmids, which can be shared between cells, allowing for the rapid exchange of useful traits, such as resistance to antibiotics. This capacity for genetic exchange gives bacteria a remarkable adaptability, allowing them to thrive in changing conditions and to colonize new environments with ease. One of the most striking features of bacteria is their metabolic diversity. While animals, plants, and fungi rely on relatively limited strategies for obtaining energy, bacteria employ a staggering variety of methods. Some are photosynthetic, capturing light energy much as plants do, while others draw energy from chemical reactions involving sulfur, iron, or even radioactive materials. Some bacteria live on simple sugars, while others can digest complex substances like cellulose, plastics, or oil. In oxygen-rich environments, many bacteria use aerobic respiration, but in oxygen-poor conditions, others rely on fermentation or alternative chemical pathways. This versatility allows bacteria to occupy niches that no other organisms can, from volcanic hot springs to frozen glaciers, from the insides of animals to the most barren desert soils. Bacteria are also deeply woven into the cycles of matter that sustain ecosystems. In the nitrogen cycle, for example, certain bacteria fix nitrogen gas from the atmosphere into forms that plants can use to build proteins and nucleic acids. Without these bacteria, life as we know it would struggle, for nitrogen is essential yet inaccessible to most organisms in its gaseous form. Other bacteria decompose dead matter, breaking down complex organic molecules into simpler forms and releasing nutrients back into the soil and water. Still others participate in the carbon cycle, some producing oxygen as a byproduct of photosynthesis, others consuming organic material and releasing carbon dioxide. Through these roles, bacteria act as recyclers and transformers, ensuring that energy and nutrients continue to flow through the web of life. Though bacteria are often associated with disease in the human mind, the vast majority are harmless or even beneficial. Within our own bodies, bacteria form communities that outnumber our human cells. In the intestines, for example, trillions of bacteria help digest food, synthesize vitamins, and train the immune system. These communities, often referred to as the microbiome, are now recognized as essential to health. Without them, our ability to extract nutrients, resist pathogens, and maintain balance would be greatly diminished. The relationship is mutual, for while bacteria gain shelter and food within our bodies, we gain the benefits of their metabolic abilities. This symbiosis is not unique to humans but is found across the animal and plant kingdoms. Many insects rely on bacteria to digest otherwise indigestible food, and many plants host bacterial partners in their roots to secure nitrogen. Life, it seems, is rarely solitary. Instead, it flourishes in cooperation. Bacteria also serve as some of the most enduring records of life's history. Fossilized bacterial colonies, such as stromatolites, are among the oldest evidence of life on Earth. These layered structures, built by photosynthetic microbes that trapped and bound sediment, date back more than 3 billion years. Even today, stromatolites continue to form in certain shallow waters, offering a living glimpse into Earth's earliest ecosystems. The persistence of bacteria across such immense spans of time is a testament to their resilience. They have survived mass extinctions, ice ages, and planetary upheavals, adapting to each new condition. While many species have come and gone, bacteria as a whole have endured, continuing to dominate life in both numbers and diversity. Another remarkable feature of bacteria is their ability to form communities. Though often imagined as solitary, many bacteria live in complex groups known as biofilms. These biofilms, found on rocks and streams, on teeth as dental plaque, or on medical devices, consist of bacterial cells embedded in a sticky matrix of secreted substances. Within these structures, bacteria communicate with one another, share resources, and protect themselves against threats. The behavior of biofilms demonstrates that even simple organisms can engage in collective activity, displaying a form of social organization that benefits the group as a whole. Such cooperation blurs the line between individual and community, showing that the tree of life is shaped not only by competition, but also by collaboration. Bacteria also remind us of the continuity between the ancient and the modern. The molecular machinery that drives their cells is strikingly similar to that found in our own. The genetic code, the ribosomes that build proteins, the enzymes that harvest energy, all are shared, inherited from a common ancestor. This unity highlights the deep connections within the tree of life. Though bacteria may seem alien to us, they are in fact kin, sharing the same underlying architecture of life. To study them is not to look at something wholly other, but to look back at the origins from which we too have sprung. Beyond their ecological and evolutionary importance, bacteria also play a vital role in human society. They are harnessed in countless ways, from the production of antibiotics and vitamins to the fermentation of food and drink. Cheese, yogurt, bread, and beer all rely on bacterial activity. In medicine, bacteria are used to produce insulin, vaccines, and other treatments. In industry, they help clean up oil spills. Far from being mere curiosities, bacteria are constant companions, shaping our lives in visible and invisible ways. To reflect on the bacterial domain is to realize that life's foundation is not found only in the large, visible forms that draw our attention, but also in the small, unseen cells that permeate every environment. They are the hidden roots of ecosystems, the first inhabitants of Earth, and the silent partners in our own existence. They embody the resilience, adaptability, and interconnectedness of life itself. While their forms may be microscopic, their impact is immeasurable, reaching into every corner of the living world. And so, the branch of the tree of life that we call bacteria is not simply one part among many, but one of the most expansive and influential. It stretches back to the earliest days of Earth, spreads across every environment, and continues to shape the present and the future. To contemplate this branch is to see the tree of life in its most ancient and enduring form, a reminder that life's power often lies in simplicity, and that the smallest beings can have the greatest influence on the whole. 6. The domain of archaea. If the domain of bacteria represents life's ancient and widespread foundation, then the domain of archaea reveals life's hidden resilience and surprising adaptability. For much of scientific history, archaea were overlooked, mistaken for bacteria due to their similar shapes and apparent simplicity. Both are small, single-celled organisms lacking nuclei, and for centuries they were grouped together under the broad term prokaryotes. It was only in the late 20th century, through careful study of their genetic, sequences, and biochemical structures that scientists realized archaea are not merely unusual bacteria, but a distinct branch of the tree of life, equal in significance to bacteria and eukaryotes. Their discovery reshaped biology, expanding our understanding of life's diversity and illuminating the remarkable ways in which organisms can adapt to extreme conditions. Archaea first came to prominence because of their presence in environments once thought too hostile for life. They were found thriving in boiling hot springs, where temperatures exceeded 100 degrees Celsius, in hypersaline lakes so salty that little else could survive, and in acidic pools where the pH rivaled that of battery acid. Others lived deep underground or in the crushing pressures of oceanic trenches, where sunlight never penetrates. Because of this, archaea were initially regarded as extremophiles, organisms that flourish under extremes of heat, pressure, salt, or acidity. Their existence challenged assumptions about where life could exist, suggesting that even the harshest corners of the planet were not barren, but alive with unseen activity. Yet as research expanded, it became clear that archaea are not confined to extreme environments. They are also present in ordinary soils, in oceans, and even in the digestive tracts of animals. In fact, archaea make up a significant portion of the Earth's microbial biomass, silently influencing ecosystems on a global scale. This realization deepened their importance. Archaea were not curiosities of rare environments, but integral participants in the ongoing cycles of life. What distinguishes archaea from bacteria lies in their molecular details. Their cell membranes, for instance, are built from unique lipids, unlike those found in any other organisms. These unusual structures allow archaea to maintain stability in conditions of extreme heat or salinity, where ordinary membranes would fall apart. Their enzymes and metabolic pathways are similarly distinct, often adapted to function in conditions that would denature proteins in other organisms. These biochemical differences not only confirm their separation from bacteria, but also highlight the creativity of evolution, which finds many solutions to the challenges of survival. One of the most fascinating contributions of archaea lies in their role in global cycles of matter. Many archaea are methanogens, organisms that produce methane as a byproduct of their metabolism. These methanogens live in oxygen-free environments such as swamps, deep sediments, and the stomachs of ruminant animals like cows. Their activity produces vast amounts of methane, a greenhouse gas that influences Earth's climate. Other archaea participate in nitrogen and carbon cycles, oxidizing ammonia, or breaking down organic compounds in ways that sustain the balance of ecosystems. Though invisible to us, their collective influence on the atmosphere and climate is profound, shaping the conditions under which other forms of life exist. The discovery of archaea also opened new perspectives on the origins of eukaryotic life. Genetic studies have revealed that eukaryotes, the domain that includes humans, share many similarities with archaea, particularly in the machinery that manages DNA and proteins. Some scientists propose that eukaryotes arose from a symbiotic partnership between an archaeal host cell and a bacterial partner that became the mitochondrion. This idea, known as the endosymbiotic theory, suggests that archaea are not only a distinct domain but also a crucial part of our own ancestry. In this sense, humans and all complex organisms carry within them the legacy of archaeal ancestors, our very cells shaped by their ancient influence. Archaea also expand our imagination beyond Earth. Their ability to survive in boiling water, in saturated brines, or in oxygen-free mud hints at the possibilities of life in extreme extraterrestrial environments. On icy moons, like Europa and Enceladus, where subsurface oceans may exist beneath frozen crusts, or on Mars, with its cold deserts and traces of methane in the atmosphere, the conditions may resemble those where archaea thrive. If life can flourish in the extremes of Earth, it is conceivable that similar life could exist elsewhere. Thus, archaea are not only key to understanding our own planet, but also to guiding our search for life in the cosmos. Though they lack the visibility of plants or animals, archaea embody a certain quiet resilience. Their existence reminds us that life is not fragile but deeply inventive, capable of finding footholds in places where it seems impossible. They survive in boiling springs, not by resisting heat, but by transforming their very biochemistry to embrace it. They endure salt-saturated waters, not by avoiding salt, but by incorporating it into their way of life. This adaptability demonstrates that survival is not about escaping difficulty, but about reshaping oneself to thrive within it. In human culture, archaea have begun to find practical uses as well. Their enzymes, stable at high temperatures or unusual conditions, are valuable tools in biotechnology. One example is the enzyme used in the polymerase chain reaction, PCR, a technique that allows scientists to copy DNA. The enzyme was originally isolated from a heat-loving microbe, an archaeal relative, and without it, much of modern molecular biology would not be possible. This connection between ancient microbes and modern science is a reminder of how deeply entwined human progress is with the unseen world of microorganisms. To reflect on the domain of archaea is to encounter a profound sense of humility. They are small, easily overlooked, and yet they represent one of the most significant branches of life's history. Their discovery showed that the diversity of life is greater than once imagined, and that the story of evolution is full of hidden chapters. They demonstrate that life is not confined to comfortable environments but extends into every possible niche, filling the planet with activity at every scale. In their ancient lineage, their resilience, and their connection to our own origins, archaea are both mysterious and familiar, alien yet deeply related. And so, in the great tree of life, the branch of archaea stands tall, equal to bacteria and eukaryotes. It stretches back to the earliest days of Earth, reminding us that the tree's roots are not singular but divided into great trunks of diversity. It reaches into the present, shaping ecosystems and influencing climate. It even stretches into our imagination of other worlds, showing us that life is not limited by what we see, but is capable of astonishing adaptability. The archaea may be invisible to the naked eye, but their story is essential to the greater whole. They are a quiet but powerful reminder that life, in all its forms, is bound together by resilience, creativity, and the unbroken thread of shared ancestry. 7. The domain of eukaryotes. The story of life becomes more familiar when we turn to the domain of eukaryotes, for within this vast branch, we find the plants that cover the land in green, the fungi that recycle the remains of the fallen, the animals that move across every landscape, and countless microscopic protists that drift unseen in water or soil. The word eukaryote means true kernel, a reference to the defining feature of these cells, the nucleus, a membrane-bound compartment that houses the genetic material. This innovation, simple in appearance yet profound in consequence, allowed for a new level of complexity. Eukaryotic cells are not only larger than those of bacteria and archaea, but also far more internally organized, with specialized structures called organelles performing distinct tasks. From this foundation, the tree of eukaryotic life spread into an extraordinary variety of forms, shaping the living world in ways both visible and invisible. At the heart of eukaryotic cells lies the nucleus, where DNA is carefully packaged and protected. This separation of genetic material from the rest of the cell provides stability and control, ensuring that the instructions for life are preserved with fidelity across generations. Surrounding the nucleus, other organelles carry out essential processes. Mitochondria act as powerhouses, generating energy by breaking down molecules in the presence of oxygen. In plants and algae, chloroplasts capture sunlight, turning it into chemical energy through photosynthesis. The endoplasmic reticulum and Golgi apparatus manage the production and distribution of proteins and lipids, while lysosomes and vacuoles handle waste, storage, and recycling. Together, these organelles create a division of labor within the cell, allowing for efficiency and specialization that prokaryotic cells cannot match. The origin of these organelles is one of the most remarkable chapters in evolutionary history. Evidence suggests that mitochondria and chloroplasts were once free-living bacteria that entered into symbiotic relationships with larger host cells. Over time, these partnerships became permanent, with the bacteria losing their independence and becoming integral parts of the eukaryotic cell. This process, known as endosymbiosis, represents one of the most profound examples of cooperation in the history of life. It shows that evolution is not only a story of competition and survival, but also one of union, where separate organisms merge into something greater than either could be alone. Our own cells, in this sense, are mosaics of ancient lineages, carrying within them the legacy of these primordial partnerships. The presence of organelles and the efficiency they provide allowed eukaryotic cells to grow larger than their prokaryotic counterparts. Greater size, in turn, made it possible for cells to adopt new shapes, to engulf food through phagocytosis, and to interact with one another in novel ways. Eventually, some eukaryotes began to live in colonies, with cells remaining attached after division. Within these colonies, certain cells began to specialize, taking on roles distinct from their neighbors. Over time, this specialization gave rise to true multicellularity, a leap that allowed organisms to develop tissues, organs, and body plans of stunning complexity. From these beginnings arose the great diversity of plants, fungi, and animals that populate the earth today. The diversity within eukaryotes is so great that it can be difficult to capture in a single description. The protists, a broad collection of mostly single-celled organisms, include algae, amoebas, and many other forms. They live in oceans, lakes, soils, and even within other organisms. Some are photosynthetic, producing much of the world's oxygen, while others are predators, feeding on bacteria or smaller protists. Though often overlooked, protists form the foundation of many food webs, sustaining ecosystems that range from the open ocean to the tiniest drop of pond water. Plants, another major branch of eukaryotes, transform the planet when they colonize the land. By capturing sunlight and fixing carbon, they became the primary producers of ecosystems, building the energy base upon which animals depend. They altered the atmosphere by releasing oxygen, creating conditions favorable for complex life. Their roots stabilized soils, their leaves captured rainfall, and their forms provided habitats for countless other species. The green sweep of forests, grasslands, and meadows is a visible testament to the influence of plants on the tree of life. Fungi represent yet another lineage of eukaryotes, distinct from both plants and animals. Neither photosynthetic nor mobile in the usual sense, fungi excel as decomposers and recyclers. They break down dead organic matter, returning nutrients to the soil and closing the loops of ecological cycles. Many fungi also form symbiotic relationships, such as mycorrhizal associations with plant roots, where both partners benefit. In forests, vast underground networks of fungal filaments connect trees to one another, transferring nutrients and information in ways that make ecosystems seem almost like single, interconnected organisms. Fungi remind us that the life of the soil is just as vital as the life above it, though less easily seen. Animals, perhaps the most familiar branch of eukaryotes to us, display a dazzling array of forms and behaviors. From the simplest sponges that filter water through their porous bodies to the complex mammals that think, feel, and build societies, animals show the power of multicellularity taken to its fullest. Muscles allow movement, nerves allow rapid communication, and specialized organs carry out diverse functions. Over hundreds of millions of years, animals have spread into every environment, from the deepest seas to the highest mountains, adapting in countless ways to the challenges of survival. Humans, though unique in their capacity for language, culture, and reflection, are one small branch of this larger animal tree, connected to all others through shared ancestry. One of the unifying features of all eukaryotes is their reliance on sexual reproduction. While many prokaryotes reproduce simply by dividing in two, eukaryotes often combine genetic material from two parents, creating offspring that are genetically distinct. This mixing of genes introduces variation, the raw material upon which natural selection acts. It ensures that populations are not static but flexible, able to adapt to changing conditions over time. The interplay of mutation, recombination, and selection has driven the flowering of diversity within the eukaryotic domain, producing the vast array of forms that inhabit our planet. The eukaryotic cell, with its nucleus and organelles, stands as one of evolution's great innovations. It represents a leap in complexity, but also a continuity with the simpler forms that came before. Its structures are built from the same molecules, its DNA encodes the same genetic code, and its energy pathways reflect the same ancient chemistry as those of bacteria and archaea. Yet within this continuity, new possibilities unfolded, leading to the intricate architectures of multicellular organisms, the forests and oceans filled with life, and the human capacity to reflect on these processes in wonder. To contemplate the domain of eukaryotes is to recognize both the diversity of life and the unity underlying it. Plants, fungi, animals, and protists may seem very different, yet they are linked by the shared architecture of the eukaryotic cell. Their differences are branches of a common lineage, shaped by billions of years of evolution. The nucleus, the mitochondrion, and the other organelles within each cell stand as markers of a shared history, a story of cooperation, adaptation, and the gradual unfolding of complexity. The tree of life is vast, but in many ways it is within the eukaryotic branch that its most visible forms arise. It is here that we find the organisms we see daily, the beings that shape landscapes and fill ecosystems, the companions with whom we share the earth. To recognize this is to feel a sense of kinship, not only with other humans but with all plants and animals, all fungi and protists, all the living forms that surround us. They are not strangers, but relatives. Their cells, built on the same plan as our own. To walk through a forest, to gaze at the sea, or even to peer through a microscope at a drop of pond water, is to see branches of the same tree, the great eukaryotic domain, unfolding in endless variation. And so, the domain of eukaryotes stands as a testament to what life can become when complexity is embraced. From a single ancestral lineage of cells with nuclei, the earth blossomed into forests and oceans, meadows and reefs, fungi and animals, the quiet and the magnificent. It is a domain that reminds us of the possibilities held within cooperation, of the beauty that arises from diversity, and of the profound unity that binds us all to the same ancient trunk. The kingdoms within eukaryotes. Within the vast domain of eukaryotes, the branches spread outward into what scientists call kingdoms. These kingdoms are not arbitrary divisions but represent the great lineages that have evolved since eukaryotic cells first arose. Each kingdom carries its own history, its own adaptations, and its own way of shaping the living world. Though all share the common architecture of the eukaryotic cell, with its nucleus and organelles, the kingdoms reveal the extraordinary diversity of forms and functions that can emerge from a shared foundation. To walk among these branches is to witness life's creativity unfolding again and again, producing plants that draw energy from sunlight, fungi that weave networks underground, animals that move with intent and sensation, and protists that fill the oceans with invisible abundance. The plant kingdom, known scientifically as plantae, is perhaps the most visible of these lineages. Wherever one looks on land, The green sweep of plants defines the landscape. From towering redwoods to small mosses, plants harness the energy of the sun through photosynthesis, transforming light into chemical energy and sustaining nearly all other life forms. Their tissues are strengthened by cellulose, their growth guided by hormones, and their reproduction spread through seeds, spores, or flowers. Plants not only provide food but also shape the very conditions of the planet, releasing oxygen into the atmosphere and stabilizing soils with their roots. They form the base of food webs, capturing energy that is passed upward to animals and humans alike. To consider plants is to see life's patient builders, beings that anchor ecosystems and sustain the breath of all who rely on oxygen. Fungi form another great kingdom, distinct from plants, though often living alongside them. They do not capture sunlight, but instead absorb nutrients from their surroundings, breaking down complex organic matter into simpler forms. Their bodies are composed of filaments called hyphae, which extend invisibly through soil, wood, or decaying matter. These filaments create vast underground networks, sometimes extending for miles, connecting roots of different plants in shared webs of exchange. In forests, fungi link trees together, transferring nutrients and even chemical signals, so that what seems like a collection of individuals is, in some ways, a connected community. Fungi also play a crucial role as decomposers, recycling the materials of dead organisms and returning them to the soil. Without fungi, ecosystems would become clogged with debris, and nutrients would remain locked away. They are the quiet recyclers, ensuring that the cycles of life continue unbroken. The kingdom Animalia holds a special place in human awareness, for it is here that we ourselves belong. Animals are distinguished by their ability to move, to sense their environment through nerves and specialized organs, and to consume other organisms for energy. They range in form from simple sponges that filter seawater to mammals with complex brains capable of reflection and imagination. Animals exhibit extraordinary diversity, from insects that fill the skies and soils to whales that glide through the oceans. Their bodies are organized into tissues and organs, their behaviors shaped by instinct and learning, their life cycles tied to both survival and reproduction. The animal kingdom is marked by motion and sensation, by the ability to interact dynamically with the environment and with one another. Humans, as one small branch of this lineage, share with all animals a heritage of movement, perception, and intricate bodily design. The protists, often grouped into a broad and somewhat undefined kingdom, represent the most diverse of all. They include single-celled organisms like amoebas and paramecia, as well as multicellular forms such as certain algae. Some are photosynthetic, forming the base of marine food webs, while others are predators, engulfing bacteria or other protists. Still others live as parasites, influencing the health of animals and plants. Protists inhabit every watery environment, from oceans to lakes, to the thin films of moisture on soil. Though often overlooked, they are of immense importance. In the oceans, photosynthetic protists like diatoms and dinoflagellates produce much of the world's oxygen, shaping the atmosphere and sustaining marine life. They are reminders that life's abundance often lies beyond sight, in microscopic forms that collectively shape the planet. Together, these kingdoms represent the unfolding of eukaryotic potential. They show how a shared cellular structure, with a nucleus and organelles, can branch into forms so different that they seem unrelated, yet are united by ancestry. Plants capture sunlight and anchor ecosystems. Fungi weave hidden networks and recycle life's materials. Animals move, sense, and create intricate interactions. Protists fill the oceans and soils with microscopic abundance. Each kingdom is a branch of the same tree, diverging long ago but continuing to grow, adapt, and influence the whole. What makes the kingdom so remarkable is not only their diversity but also their interdependence. Plants produce oxygen and food, which animals and fungi consume. Fungi decompose the remains of both plants and animals, returning nutrients to the soil for plants to use again. Protists cycle materials in aquatic systems, supporting fish, whales, and countless other creatures. Animals disperse seeds and pollinate flowers, aiding plant reproduction. These connections form webs of life, in which no kingdom exists alone, but all participate in a shared system of exchange. To understand one kingdom fully is to recognize its ties to the others. For the kingdoms of eukaryotes are not isolated towers but interconnected branches of the same tree. The classification into kingdoms is itself a human attempt to bring order to life's complexity. The boundaries are not always sharp, and debates continue about how best to categorize certain groups. Some scientists argue for additional kingdoms, or for breaking apart the protists into multiple lineages, each with its own distinct history. This fluidity reflects not confusion but the dynamic nature of science, which evolves as new evidence emerges. As genetic studies reveal more about the relationships among organisms, the tree is redrawn, its branches clarified, and its kingdoms reconsidered. What remains constant, however, is the recognition that life is both unified and diverse, that from common roots have grown forms of astonishing variety. The kingdoms within eukaryotes also reveal the power of adaptation. Each lineage found its own way of surviving, whether by harnessing light, decomposing matter, consuming other beings, or drifting with the currents. Each responded to the challenges of its environment in creative ways, leading to the multiplicity of forms we see today. This adaptability is a hallmark of life, a testament to its ability to flourish under countless conditions. The kingdoms are, in this sense, the flowering of potential, each branch demonstrating what can emerge when cells with nuclei and organelles explore the possibilities of existence. When we place ourselves within this picture, we find that our own kingdom, Animalia, is but one among many. We share the earth with plants that feed us and fungi that sustain the soil, with protists that oxygenate the seas and bacteria and archaea that continue their unseen work. Our uniqueness lies not in separation but in connection, in recognizing that we are part of this greater system, dependent on it for air, food, and survival. To see the kingdoms within eukaryotes is to appreciate the grand diversity of life, but also to feel the quiet unity of a shared ancestry that stretches back billions of years. And so, the kingdoms within eukaryotes are not just categories in a chart, but living realities, shaping the earth each day. They are the forests and oceans, the soil and sky, the visible and the invisible. They are the result of ancient divergences, of evolution's slow branching, and of the persistent creativity of life. In contemplating them, we see both difference and connection, complexity and simplicity, the many ways in which life has unfolded from common roots. The kingdoms stand as great branches of the tree of life, each with its own form and function, yet all united by the same trunk, the same origin, and the same story of survival and growth. 9. The rise of multicellularity. One of the most profound transformations in the history of life was the step from single-celled existence to the cooperative complexity of multicellularity. For billions of years, life remained microscopic, its forms no larger than a pinhead, inhabiting oceans, lakes, and soils in invisible abundance. Bacteria and archaea spread across the earth, while single-celled eukaryotes diversified into countless varieties of algae, amoebas, and protozoa. Yet eventually, some of these cells began to live not in isolation, but in association, remaining attached after division, communicating with one another, and gradually forming communities that acted as single organisms. This transition, slow and incremental, marked the beginning of multicellular life, from which arose plants, fungi, and animals, the great visible kingdoms that now define much of our perception of the living world. The shift to multicellularity was not a single event, but a process that occurred many times in different lineages. Evidence suggests that it arose independently in plants, fungi, and animals, as well as in several groups of algae and protists. This repetition indicates that the conditions for multicellularity are not rare or unlikely, but arise naturally when cells find advantages in cooperation. The benefits are clear. Larger organisms can escape predators too small to engulf them. They can occupy new environments, and they can develop specialized cells that divide labor, making the whole organism more efficient than any single cell on its own. In this way, multicellularity opened doors to new possibilities, leading to the immense diversity of complex life we see today. At its simplest, multicellularity began with cells sticking together. After dividing, instead of separating, some cells remained attached, forming chains, clusters, or filaments. Over time, mechanisms evolved to strengthen this adhesion, with proteins and polysaccharides binding cells into stable structures. Communication between cells also developed, with chemical signals passing from one to another, coordinating growth and behavior. In modern multicellular organisms, this coordination has reached extraordinary levels, with entire tissues and organs functioning as unified systems. Yet the first steps were small, mere attachments that set the stage for greater complexity. A crucial innovation in the rise of multicellularity was cellular differentiation. In single-celled organisms, each cell performs all the functions necessary for survival, capturing energy, processing nutrients, and reproducing. In multicellular organisms, by contrast, different cells can specialize, taking on distinct roles. Some may focus on capturing light, others on movement, others on reproduction. This division of labor increases efficiency, allowing organisms to grow larger and more complex. In plants, for example, certain cells form protective outer layers, while others transport water or perform photosynthesis. In animals, cells differentiate into muscles, nerves, blood, and countless other forms. The specialization of cells into tissues and organs is what gives multicellular life its richness of form and function. The fossil record offers glimpses into the early stages of multicellularity. Some of the oldest evidence comes from simple algae, preserved in ancient rocks, showing filaments of cells bound together. Later fossils reveal larger and more complex structures, such as the Ediacaran biota, mysterious soft-bodied organisms that lived around 600 million years ago. Though their exact relationships remain uncertain, these fossils suggest an early flowering of multicellular forms before the explosion of animal diversity in the Cambrian period. The Cambrian explosion, about 540 million years ago, marks the point when multicellular animals diversified rapidly, producing the ancestors of nearly all modern animal groups. This burst of innovation was possible only because the groundwork of multicellularity had been laid. Multicellularity also required innovations in how organisms managed energy and resources. Larger bodies demand more energy, and multicellular forms evolve systems to meet this demand. In animals, circulatory systems transport oxygen and nutrients to cells deep within the body. In plants, vascular tissues carry water from roots to leaves and distribute sugars from leaves to other tissues. These transport systems allowed organisms to grow beyond the limits of diffusion, supporting larger sizes and more intricate structures. With size came new opportunities. Plants reached upward toward sunlight, while animals swam, crawled, and eventually walked across the land. The rise of multicellularity also changed the relationships between organisms. Predation became more common as larger animals evolved to feed on others. In response, prey species developed defenses, from protective shells to the ability to move swiftly. These interactions drove evolutionary arms races, spurring diversity and innovation. In plants, herbivory by animals led to the evolution of chemical defenses, and structural adaptations like thorns, while animals evolved digestive systems capable of handling plant tissues. The interconnectedness of life grew deeper, with ecosystems becoming more complex webs of interaction. At the microscopic level, the rise of multicellularity is still evident in modern organisms. Some protists, like volvox, form colonies where individual cells work together, some specializing in reproduction, while others handle movement. These colonies are often studied as models for how multicellularity may have begun. Even within our own bodies, the principles of cooperation and specialization are visible. Trillions of cells, all descended from a single fertilized egg, take on distinct forms and roles, yet together they form a coherent individual. This unity depends on communication, adhesion, and regulation traits that first appeared in the earliest multicellular organisms and have been refined ever since. Multicellularity also carries risks. Cells that fail to cooperate, dividing uncontrollably, can give rise to diseases like cancer. This highlights the delicate balance required to maintain multicellular integrity, where the needs of the whole must prevail over the impulses of the individual parts. Mechanisms of regulation, such as programmed cell death, evolved to manage these risks, ensuring that the organism as a whole could thrive. These mechanisms remind us that multicellularity is not simply an accident of nature, but a carefully maintained system of checks and balances. The significance of multicellularity cannot be overstated. Without it, there would be no forests or coral reefs, no birds in the sky or mammals on the plains, no fungi spreading their networks through the soil. The visible world, as we know it, is built upon the foundation of multicellular life. It transformed the Earth's ecosystems, altering the atmosphere, reshaping landscapes, and creating environments where other organisms could thrive. It also made possible the evolution of intelligence, culture, and reflection, for only multicellular complexity could give rise to nervous systems and brains capable of such capacities. To reflect on the rise of multicellularity is to see both the patience and the creativity of evolution. From simple beginnings, cells sticking together, the path unfolded toward extraordinary diversity. Each step built upon what came before, guided by natural selection, chance, and cooperation. The result is the living world around us, filled with forms of breathtaking variety, each a branch of the great tree of life. The transition from single cells to multicellular organisms was not inevitable, but once it occurred, it opened possibilities that reshaped the course of life forever. And so, multicellularity stands as one of the great milestones of evolution, a branching point that led to the visible richness of Earth's biosphere. It is a reminder that cooperation can be as powerful a force as competition, that unity among small parts can give rise to wholes of astonishing complexity. To contemplate this moment in life's history is to glimpse the deep roots of the forests, the hidden networks of fungi, the motion of animals, and even the human capacity to reflect upon it all. The rise of multicellularity was not only a biological innovation, but the beginning of a new chapter in the story of life, one that continues to unfold in every plant, every animal, every organism made of many cells working together in harmony. 10. The language of classification. As life on Earth diversified into countless forms, humans sought ways to understand and organize it. The abundance of living creatures, from the smallest insects to the tallest trees, presented a puzzle of both complexity and order. How could one make sense of the great variety of species, each with its own characteristics, yet all bound by shared patterns? Out of this curiosity arose the discipline of classification, a language designed to describe, compare, and connect the living world. Classification does not merely label organisms, it reveals their relationships, showing how each species fits within the grand tree of life. Over centuries, this language has evolved, From early attempts at naming and grouping to the modern systems of taxonomy that rely on genetics and evolutionary history, to explore this language is to see how humans have sought to bring clarity to the vastness of life. In the earliest days of observation, people recognized differences among plants and animals, distinguishing those useful for food, medicine, or shelter. These practical divisions gradually gave way to broader categories based on form and function. Ancient Greek philosophers such as Aristotle proposed systems that divided animals by traits like blood, movement, or habitat. While limited in scope, such early efforts reflected a desire to impose order on the natural world. For centuries, similar approaches dominated, grouping organisms by appearance or utility rather than by deeper connections. The great shift came in the 18th century with the work of Carl Linnaeus, a Swedish naturalist who laid the foundations of modern taxonomy. Linnaeus introduced a system of naming and grouping that remains influential today. He developed the practice of binomial nomenclature, giving each species a two-part Latin name composed of genus and species. Humans, for example, were named Homo sapiens, with Homo as the genus and sapiens as the species. This system provided clarity and universality, allowing scientists around the world to refer to organisms with consistent names rather than local or descriptive terms. Linnaeus also organized species into hierarchical categories: kingdom, class, order, genus, and species. Over time, this hierarchy expanded to include phylum and family, forming the structure we still use: domain, kingdom, phylum, class, order, family, genus, species. This language of classification is not arbitrary but reflects patterns of similarity and difference. Organisms within the same genus share more in common with one another than with those of a different genus, just as those in the same family share broader traits. Each level of the hierarchy captures a degree of relatedness, like the branching points of a tree, from broad trunks to fine twigs. In this way, taxonomy mirrors the evolutionary process, where species diverge from common ancestors and form groups of varying closeness. The hierarchy allows us to see life not as a jumble of disconnected forms, but as an organized whole. For Linnaeus and his contemporaries, classification was based largely on physical traits. Plants were grouped by the arrangement of their flowers, animals by body structures. But as knowledge grew, it became clear that appearances could be deceptive. Convergent evolution, where unrelated organisms develop similar traits to adapt to similar environments, sometimes blurred distinctions. For example, dolphins and sharks both have streamlined bodies suited to swimming, but one is a mammal and the other a fish. Such challenges prompted deeper investigation into anatomy, embryology, and eventually molecular biology, leading to more accurate understandings of relationships. The 20th century brought a revolution in classification with the rise of evolutionary thinking. Charles Darwin's theory of evolution by natural selection emphasized that species are not fixed but descend with modification from common ancestors. This insight transformed taxonomy, shifting its purpose from simply grouping similar organisms to tracing evolutionary lineages. The language of classification became a map of ancestry, reflecting not only resemblance, but also history. Cladistics, a method developed in the mid-20th century, formalized this approach by focusing on shared derived traits, features inherited from common ancestors. By analyzing these traits, scientists constructed branching diagrams called cladograms, visual representations of the evolutionary tree. Molecular biology deepened this transformation even further. With the discovery of DNA and the ability to compare genetic sequences, scientists gained a new tool for measuring relatedness. Genes provide a record of ancestry, revealing connections invisible to the eye. For example, genetic evidence showed that whales are closely related to hoofed mammals like hippos, a relationship not obvious from outward appearance. Similarly, genetic studies revealed that fungi are more closely related to animals than to plants, reshaping our understanding of the kingdoms. In this way, the language of classification evolved to incorporate molecular data, becoming more precise and more reflective of life's true history. Modern taxonomy begins with three broad domains: bacteria, archaea, and eukaryota, each representing fundamental divisions of cellular structure and ancestry. From these domains, the hierarchy extends downward into kingdoms, phyla, and so on, narrowing until it reaches individual species. Each step represents a finer level of resolution, tracing the branches of the tree of life. The classification of humans illustrates this structure. We belong to the domain Eukaryota, the kingdom Animalia, the phylum Chordata, the class Mammalia, the order Primates, the family Hominidae, the genus Homo, and the species Sapiens. Each level places us within broader groups, linking us to other animals, other mammals, and ultimately, all of life. The act of classification is more than an academic exercise. It shapes how we perceive the natural world, influencing conservation, medicine, and agriculture. By recognizing the relationships among species, scientists can predict traits, understand diseases, and protect biodiversity. If two plants are closely related, for instance, knowledge of one may guide the use of the other for food or medicine. In conservation, taxonomy identifies species at risk, clarifies their relationships, and guides strategies to preserve ecosystems. The language of classification thus serves as both a scientific framework and a practical tool for engaging with life's diversity. At the same time, taxonomy remains dynamic. As new discoveries emerge, classifications are revised. Genetic studies often reveal surprising relationships, leading to redefinitions of groups. The protists, once treated as a single kingdom, are now understood to represent multiple lineages, each deserving its own branch. Similarly, the placement of certain organisms, like the archaea, required rethinking the very structure of classification, leading to the three-domain system. This fluidity reflects the living nature of science, where knowledge is continually refined and the tree is redrawn as new branches are uncovered. Yet, amid these changes, the essence of classification remains the same. It is a language for describing life's order. It allows us to place each organism within a larger context, to see its connections and its place in the web of existence. It gives names to the branches and leaves of the tree of life, making the vastness of biodiversity comprehensible. To learn this language is to see the hidden patterns beneath diversity, to recognize unity amid difference, and to feel the continuity that links all living things. The language of classification is, in the end, a reflection of our own search for understanding. Faced with the immense variety of life, humans sought to bring clarity, to create a map that captures both difference and connection. The map is not the territory, and no classification can capture the full richness of living beings. Yet the attempt itself reveals something profound, that life, however diverse, is connected by lines of descent, and that these connections can be traced, named, and understood. The language of classification is thus both a scientific system and a quiet meditation on unity, a way of seeing the tree of life not as a chaos of forms, but as an ordered, branching whole. 11. Branching through evolution. The tree of life is not static, frozen in a single moment of time. Its branches grow, diverge, and spread outward. And at the heart of this endless unfolding is the process of evolution. Evolution is the quiet but relentless mechanism that shapes the diversity of species, the force that explains how organisms come to resemble one another in some traits and differ so profoundly in others. It is not driven by purpose or by foresight, but by the steady interaction between living beings and their environments. Through countless generations, small variations accumulate, and the branches of the tree diverge, giving rise to new forms. To see the tree of life is to see evolution in action, its branching patterns etched into the history of every species. At the most basic level, evolution rests on variation. No two individuals in a population are exactly alike. Within the smallest differences of form, behavior, or physiology lie the seeds of change. These variations arise naturally through mutations in DNA, the rearrangement of genes during reproduction, and the mixing of genetic material. Though most changes may be neutral or even disadvantageous, some provide subtle benefits in survival or reproduction. In a world of shifting environments, predators, climates, and resources, such differences can tip the balance between success and failure. Over time, traits that offer an advantage become more common, while others fade away. This gradual process, known as natural selection, is the mechanism that Charles Darwin described as the origin of species. The branching of evolution occurs when populations become separated, whether by geography, by ecological niches, or by behaviors that prevent interbreeding. Imagine a population of organisms spread across a wide landscape. If a river changes its course, splitting the population into two isolated groups, each will adapt to its own environment. Over thousands or millions of years, the accumulation of differences may become so great that the two groups can no longer interbreed. At that point, they are no longer the same species but two distinct branches of the tree of life. This process, called speciation, explains the vast proliferation of life forms across the earth. It is not a sudden leap but a gradual divergence, a slow branching that builds complexity over time. Evolution's branching patterns are not uniform. Some lineages remain relatively unchanged for long stretches, while others diversify rapidly. Periods of stability may be punctuated by bursts of innovation, often triggered by environmental shifts. The Cambrian explosion, for example, saw the sudden appearance of many animal body plans within a relatively short span of geological time, perhaps spurred by changes in oxygen levels, predation pressures, and ecological opportunities. At other times, mass extinctions pruned the tree dramatically, wiping out entire lineages and leaving space for others to grow. The extinction of the dinosaurs, 65 million years ago, cleared ecological niches that mammals quickly filled, leading to the rise of forms that eventually included humans. In this way, the history of life is marked not only by steady branching, but also by great turning points, where new directions emerge in response to catastrophe or opportunity. Evidence of evolution's branching can be seen in the shared traits among species. Homologous structures, such as the forelimbs of humans, bats, whales, and cats, reveal common ancestry, even though the limbs have adapted to very different purposes. The bones are arranged in similar patterns, reflecting their origin in a shared ancestor, but evolution has reshaped them into wings for flight, flippers for swimming, or hands for grasping. The same is true at the molecular level, where genetic sequences reveal patterns of similarity that trace the paths of descent. DNA comparisons show, for example, that humans share more genetic similarity with chimpanzees than with any other animal, placing them as our closest living relatives. The branching patterns written in genes confirm the connections suggested by anatomy and fossils, weaving together a consistent picture of descent with modification. Evolution also explains the extraordinary adaptability of life. As environments change, species branch into new forms suited to the conditions. Birds radiated into countless species, some adapted to forests, others to deserts, still others to oceans or mountains. Plants diversified into flowering forms, grasses, and trees, each filling niches with their own strategies. Insects, with their small size and rapid reproduction, became one of the most successful groups of all, diversifying into millions of species. This adaptability ensures that the tree of life continues to grow and spread, its branches finding ways to thrive in every corner of the earth. Yet evolution is not a march toward perfection. It is a process of adjustment, limited by history and circumstance. Traits arise not because they are ideal, but because they work well enough in the given context. A panda's thumb, used for grasping bamboo, is not a true thumb, but an enlarged wrist bone, repurposed for a new function. The human spine, adapted from ancestors that walked on four legs, carries the strain of bipedal posture. These examples remind us that evolution works with what already exists, reshaping old structures into new roles, rather than designing from scratch. The imperfections of organisms are as much a part of their history as their successes. The branching of evolution also creates a profound sense of connection. Every divergence implies a shared origin further back in time. Humans and chimpanzees share a relatively recent ancestor, while humans and birds trace back further to early reptiles. Humans and fungi share ancestry even further back, while humans and bacteria connect at the deepest roots of the tree. To recognize these connections is to see that all life is related, not metaphorically but literally, through unbroken chains of descent. Each species is a twig on the tree, but the twigs connect through branches, branches through limbs, and limbs through the trunk, all the way back to the roots. The tree of life is not a symbol but a reality, one that reflects the shared history of every organism that has ever lived. Evolution continues to this day, quietly shaping the branches of the tree. Bacteria evolve resistance to antibiotics, insects adapt to pesticides, and species shift their ranges in response to climate change. New species emerge, while others vanish. The process is ongoing, as relentless as it has always been, its pace measured in generations rather than years. Though we often think of evolution as something belonging to the distant past, it is as present as the growth of a tree, steady and continuous. Every living being carries the imprint of its evolutionary history, and every population is part of the ongoing branching. To reflect on evolution is to see the tree of life not as a static diagram but as a living, growing entity. Its branches are shaped by variation, selection, and time, by the interplay of chance and necessity. It tells us that life is dynamic, always changing, always branching, and always connected. The patterns of similarity and difference among species are not accidents but reflections of history. The diversity of forms around us is not chaos but the outcome of branching paths, each shaped by countless generations. Evolution is the patient sculptor of life, carving the branches of the tree into endless forms, some fleeting, some enduring, but all part of the same unfolding story. And so, branching through evolution is the essence of life's history. It is the quiet rhythm beneath the diversity of species, the force that explains both unity and difference. It reminds us that every organism, from the simplest bacterium to the most complex animal, is part of the same grand pattern of descent. To contemplate this is to feel both humility and wonder, for we too are products of this, branching, twigs on the tree shaped by the same forces that guide all life. The tree of life grows not by design but by evolution, and in its branching we see the story of existence written in every form, every lineage, and every living being. 12. The fossil record's story. If evolution is the process that shapes the branches of the tree of life, then fossils are the traces that allow us to glimpse those branches as they once were. The fossil record is like a collection of snapshots, imperfect and scattered, yet together they provide a profound window into the deep history of life on Earth. Every fossil is a fragment of time preserved in stone, a silent witness to organisms that once lived, moved, and thrived in worlds long vanished. Through them, we see the outlines of extinct species, the gradual transformation of forms, and the branching connections that link the past to the present. The story of the fossil record is not only scientific but poetic, for it reveals the continuity of life across billions of years and reminds us that the ground beneath our feet is filled with memory. Fossils form under specific conditions, Most living beings vanish without a trace, their remains consumed by scavengers or decomposed by microbes. But occasionally, circumstances align to preserve a body or imprint. Sediment may quickly bury an organism, shielding it from decay, and over time, minerals seep into the tissues, replacing them with stone. In other cases, impressions are left behind in mud or sand, later hardened into rock. Rarely, insects or plants may become trapped in amber, or bones preserved in ice, offering extraordinary detail. These processes are selective, favoring organisms with hard parts like shells, bones, or teeth, and leaving gaps for the soft-bodied forms that were once equally abundant. For this reason, the fossil record is incomplete, a patchwork of preservation. Yet, even in its incompleteness, it provides invaluable insight into life's unfolding. The earliest fossils date back more than 3.5 billion years. These are not bones or shells, but microbial mats, preserved in layered structures called stromatolites, formed by colonies of microbes that trapped sediments. Stromatolites still exist today in shallow coastal waters, continuing the same processes that shaped ancient rocks. To study them is to peer into life's earliest chapters, when the planet was still young, the air without oxygen, and the seas teeming with microscopic pioneers. From these beginnings, the fossil record stretches forward, capturing the great transformations that followed: the rise of multicellularity, the appearance of animals, the greening of the land, and the flowering of diversity in the oceans. The Cambrian period, beginning about 540 million years ago, marks one of the most famous chapters in the fossil record, known as the Cambrian explosion. This era saw a sudden proliferation of complex animal forms. Fossils from sites such as the Burgess Shale in Canada preserve extraordinary details of these early creatures, many of which represent the ancestors of modern groups. Trilobites, armored arthropods with segmented bodies, scuttled across the seafloor, while soft-bodied forms displayed body plans unlike anything alive today. The Cambrian record reveals how quickly life diversified once multicellular animals had emerged, filling ecological niches with new forms and interactions. It is a vivid illustration of evolution's branching, captured in stone. The fossil record also chronicles the great transitions of life from one environment to another. Around 360 million years ago, vertebrates that had long lived in the seas began to move onto land. Fossils of transitional species, such as Tiktaalik, reveal animals with features of both fish and early amphibians: fins with bones resembling limbs, lungs, as well as gills, and flat skulls, suited for shallow water. These fossils capture the gradual steps of adaptation, showing not a sudden leap but a continuum of forms bridging water and land. Similarly, the transition from reptiles to birds is documented in fossils like Archaeopteryx, with both feathered wings and reptilian traits. These transitional fossils are the footprints of evolution, showing the branching paths as species adapted to new ways of life. The record is not only about transitions, but also about extinctions. 5 times in Earth's history, mass extinctions wiped away large portions of biodiversity, pruning the branches of the tree of life. The end Permian extinction, about 252 million years ago, was the most severe, eliminating more than 90% of marine species and 70% of terrestrial ones. Later, the extinction at the end of the Cretaceous period brought an end to the non-avian dinosaurs, clearing the way for mammals to diversify. These events, recorded in layers of rock and sudden disappearances of fossil types, remind us that life's history is shaped not only by gradual branching, but also by abrupt losses. Yet after each extinction, new branches emerged, filling the empty spaces with fresh diversity. The tree was pruned, but it grew again. Fossils also provide direct evidence of relationships among species. By comparing skeletal structures across time, Scientists can trace the gradual changes that lead from one form to another. The lineage of horses, for instance, is preserved in fossils that show the transition from small, multi-toed ancestors to the large, single-toed animals of today. Similarly, whale evolution is revealed through fossils of land-dwelling ancestors with legs, gradually replaced by species with limbs adapted for swimming, until fully aquatic whales emerged. These records show the slow unfolding of evolutionary pathways, the branching and reshaping of traits over millions of years. Beyond bones and shells, the fossil record preserves traces of behavior. Footprints hardened into stone reveal the movements of dinosaurs across ancient mudflats. Burrows and nests indicate how animals lived, while coprolite's fossilized droppings offer insight into diets. Even the delicate imprints of leaves, with veins and edges preserved, show us the forests of long-vanished worlds. These fossils capture not just the forms of organisms, but the lives they once lived, the environments they inhabited, and the interactions that defined their existence. The fossil record is also a record of time itself. Each layer of rock represents a chapter, with the oldest at the bottom and the youngest at the top. Within these layers, fossils are arranged in order, showing the succession of life through ages. This ordering allows scientists to construct a timeline of life's history, from the first microbes to the rise of humans. Radiometric dating adds precision, measuring the ages of rocks through the decay of isotopes and confirming the vast spans of time involved. Together, stratigraphy and radiometry reveal that life's story is measured not in centuries but in billions of years, with each fossil a marker along that immense journey. For humans, fossils hold a particular fascination because they reveal our own ancestry. Fossil hominins, from Australopithecus to Homo erectus and beyond, trace the branching path of human evolution. Skulls, teeth, and bones preserved in rock allow us to see the gradual changes in brain size, posture, and tool use that led to our own species. They remind us that we are not separate from the tree of life but deeply embedded within it. Our story, one among many, recorded in stone. To reflect on the fossil record is to feel a deep sense of connection across time. Every fossil is a fragment of continuity, a reminder that the living world we see today is the result of countless generations before. The shells embedded in cliffs, the bones preserved in deserts, the leaves imprinted in shale, each speaks of lives once lived, of branches once growing, of worlds that preceded our own. Though incomplete, the record is rich enough to show the pattern, the gradual branching of evolution, the rise and fall of species, the persistence of life through change and catastrophe. The fossil record is not a static archive but a living dialogue between past and present. As new fossils are discovered, the tree is redrawn, new connections revealed, old assumptions revised. It is a record that continues to grow, with each discovery adding a piece to the puzzle of life. And though much is still hidden, what we have is enough to reveal the profound truth that all life is connected through time, that every species is part of an unfolding story, and that the earth itself carries within it the memory of its living history. 13. The role of DNA. At the heart of every living being lies a quiet thread, a molecule that carries the instructions of life and passes them from one generation to the next. This molecule is DNA, deoxyribonucleic acid, and it serves as the universal language of biology. No matter how different two organisms may appear, a human and a tree, a mushroom and a bacterium, they are united by the presence of DNA in their cells. It is this common molecule that records ancestry, directs growth, and provides the raw material for evolution. To understand the tree of life, one must understand DNA, for it is the binding thread that links every branch and every leaf, from the earliest microbes to the vast diversity of organisms alive today. DNA is built from simple components, yet its structure holds extraordinary power. At its core, it is a long chain of nucleotides, each made of a sugar, a phosphate group, and a nitrogenous base. There are 4 kinds of bases: adenine, thymine, cytosine, and guanine, and the sequence in which they are arranged encodes information, much like letters forming words and sentences. DNA is arranged in a double helix, 2 strands twisted around each other, held together by bonds between complementary bases. Adenine pairs with thymine, and cytosine pairs with guanine. This elegant structure, discovered in the mid-20th century, revealed how DNA could both store information and be faithfully copied, ensuring continuity of life across generations. What makes DNA remarkable is not only its ability to store information, but also the universality of its code. The sequence of bases specifies the order of amino acids in proteins, the molecules that carry out nearly all functions within cells. From enzymes that catalyze reactions to structural proteins that give cells shape, all are built from instructions encoded in DNA. The genetic code is nearly universal, with the same triplets of bases corresponding to the same amino acids across almost all organisms. This universality provides powerful evidence for common ancestry. The same molecular language is spoken by bacteria, archaea, plants, fungi, and animals alike. It is as if all life writes its story in the same alphabet, with variations and flourishes shaped by billions of years of evolution. The role of DNA extends beyond storing information. It is the basis for inheritance. When organisms reproduce, DNA is copied and passed to offspring. In a bacterium dividing into 2, the single circular chromosome is replicated, with each daughter cell receiving a complete copy. In multicellular organisms, DNA is passed through eggs and sperm, ensuring continuity between generations. Though copying is generally precise, occasional errors, mutations introduce variation. These changes may be small, such as a single base altered, or larger, such as sections duplicated, deleted, or rearranged. While many mutations have little effect, some alter traits in ways that influence survival or reproduction. Over generations, these changes accumulate, providing the material for natural selection to act upon. Thus, DNA is not only the script of life, but also the canvas upon which evolution paints. The study of DNA has transformed our understanding of the tree of life. By comparing sequences across species, scientists can trace relationships far more accurately than by physical traits alone. For instance, genetic evidence revealed that whales are closely related to hoofed mammals, a relationship not obvious from their outward form. Similarly, DNA comparisons showed that fungi are more closely related to animals than to plants, reshaping our view of the kingdoms. These discoveries highlight how DNA acts as a record of history, a molecular archive that carries within it the branching patterns of evolution. Each mutation, each rearrangement, is like a note in a symphony that has been playing for billions of years, passed along, altered, and continued through lineages. DNA also reveals the deep connections among all living things. Humans share more than 98% of their DNA with chimpanzees, their closest living relatives. With mice, the similarity is around 85%, reflecting shared ancestry among mammals. Even with plants, the overlap is substantial, for many of the basic genes governing cell function are conserved across all domains of life. Astonishingly, humans share a portion of their DNA with bacteria, reminders that we all descend from common microbial ancestors. These similarities underscore the unity of life, showing that the differences we see are variations on a shared foundation. The tree of life is not a collection of unrelated forms, but a branching network of kinship, and DNA is the thread that reveals it. Beyond revealing ancestry, DNA plays a daily role in the functioning of life. Within cells, genes are transcribed into RNA, which in turn guides the assembly of proteins. This flow of information, known as the central dogma of molecular biology, is the mechanism by which instructions in DNA become the living processes of growth, metabolism, and reproduction. In humans, DNA directs the development of tissues, organs, and systems, shaping the body from a single fertilized egg into a complex individual. In plants, DNA orchestrates the formation of leaves, stems, roots, and flowers, coordinating responses to light and water. Across all organisms, DNA is the silent conductor of life's orchestra, guiding countless processes with precision and continuity. The resilience of DNA is matched by its fragility. It is constantly subject to damage from radiation, chemicals, and normal cellular activity. Yet cells possess elaborate repair mechanisms, enzymes that detect errors and correct them, maintaining the integrity of the code. Without such systems, life would quickly unravel. Still, some changes escape repair, contributing to genetic diversity. This balance between stability and change is central to life's continuity and adaptability, ensuring both the preservation of essential functions and the possibility of innovation. In human culture, DNA has become more than a molecule. It is a symbol of identity and connection. The discovery that individuals can be uniquely identified by their DNA has transformed medicine, forensics, and anthropology. Genetic studies trace human migrations across the globe, revealing how populations spread and mingled. They connect us not only to one another, but also to our ancient ancestors, whose DNA lingers in our genomes. Even extinct species, like Neanderthals and mammoths, have had their DNA sequenced, allowing glimpses into their biology and relationships. Through DNA, the past speaks directly to the present, bridging the gaps left by fossils and artifacts. To contemplate the role of DNA is to sense both the unity and the diversity of life. It is a single molecule, shared by all organisms, yet endlessly varied in sequence, producing the staggering range of forms we see. It is at once stable and dynamic, preserving life across billions of years, while enabling the continual branching of evolution. It is the common thread woven through the tree of life, invisible, yet universal, connecting every leaf to the trunk and every branch to the roots. In the stillness of reflection, one might imagine DNA as the script of a story that has been unfolding since life began. Each species is a chapter, each individual a sentence, each cell a word written in the alphabet of 4 bases. The story is unfinished, still being written in every organism alive today, continuing into the future. To read this story is to understand that life is not separate fragments, but a single, continuous narrative, one in which all beings share a role. DNA is the language of that story, the voice of the tree of life speaking through time. 14. Microbes, the hidden majority. When most people imagine the tree of life, their minds fill with visions of towering animals, lush forests, bright flowers, and intricate fungi. These are the visible branches, the ones that catch the eye and shape the landscapes of our daily existence. Yet, in truth, the overwhelming majority of life on Earth is far smaller, far quieter, and largely unseen. Microbes, tiny organisms too small to be perceived without magnification, dominate the tree not only in numbers but in diversity, function, and endurance. They were the first inhabitants of Earth, and they remain its most numerous and influential tenants. To contemplate microbes is to recognize that the true structure of the tree of life lies not in the visible canopy, but in the unseen foundation, the hidden majority upon which all else depends. Microbes include bacteria, archaea, and many single-celled eukaryotes, such as protists and certain fungi. Together, they represent the oldest lineages of life, dating back billions of years. Before animals swam in the seas or plants covered the land, microbes shaped the planet, They created the first ecosystems, recycled the first nutrients, and altered the atmosphere in ways that made more complex life possible. In many ways, Earth is still a microbial planet, for their numbers dwarf those of larger organisms. A single gram of soil contains billions of microbes, and the total number of microbial cells on Earth is estimated to be greater than the number of stars in the observable universe. To reflect on this scale is to see that microbes are not exceptions but the rule, the dominant form of life in both history and the present. Their abundance is matched by their diversity. Microbes occupy every conceivable niche, from boiling hot springs to frozen tundras, from the deepest trenches of the ocean to the thin upper layers of the atmosphere. Some thrive in environments saturated with salt, others in highly acidic pools, still others in complete darkness, where chemical reactions provide the only source of energy. Many live in association with larger organisms, forming symbiotic partnerships that sustain both partners. This adaptability arises from their immense variety of metabolic pathways, enabling them to draw energy from sunlight, from chemicals, or from organic matter. The microbial world is not uniform but endlessly inventive, a laboratory of evolution that explores every possible avenue of survival. Perhaps the most profound impact of microbes lies in their role in shaping Earth's atmosphere. Billions of years ago, photosynthetic microbes known as cyanobacteria began releasing oxygen as a byproduct of their metabolism. This process, called the Great Oxidation Event, transformed the planet. Before it, Earth's atmosphere contained little free oxygen, and many organisms thrived in anaerobic conditions. The release of oxygen was at first toxic to much of life, causing extinctions and upheaval. Yet over time, new lineages adapted, using oxygen as a powerful tool for energy production. This shift paved the way for the evolution of complex, multicellular organisms, including plants and animals. The air we breathe today is a direct result of microbial activity long ago, a reminder that microbes shape not only the biosphere but the very conditions that make human life possible. Even now, microbes maintain the cycles of matter that sustain ecosystems. In the nitrogen cycle, certain bacteria convert atmospheric nitrogen into forms that plants can use, while others break down organic nitrogen back into gas. In the carbon cycle, microbes decompose dead matter, recycle nutrients, and regulate the flow of carbon between soil, oceans, and atmosphere. Without these invisible processes, ecosystems would collapse, and the great cycles of life would falter. Microbes are the unseen custodians of balance, ensuring that resources flow, energy circulates, and the tree continues to grow. Microbes are not only ancient architects of the environment, but also close companions of larger organisms. Within the human body, trillions of microbes form the microbiome, a complex community that inhabits skin, mouth, and especially the gut. Far from being invaders, these microbes assist in digestion, produce essential vitamins, and help regulate the immune system. Each person carries more microbial cells than human cells, a reminder that we are not solitary beings, but ecosystems in ourselves, hosts to a multitude of hidden partners. The same is true across the living world. Corals depend on symbiotic algae, cows rely on gut microbes to digest cellulose, and plants partner with fungi and bacteria at their roots. Life is interwoven with microbial presence, and without them, larger organisms would not survive. The hidden majority also demonstrates the resilience of life. When conditions grow extreme, microbes often endure where larger organisms fail. Some enter dormant states, forming spores that can survive heat, drought, or radiation for centuries. Others continue active life in boiling waters or beneath kilometers of rock. Their persistence through Earth's upheavals, asteroid impacts, volcanic eruptions, ice ages testifies to their adaptability. While many species of plants and animals have come and gone, Microbes have persisted, a constant presence across the eons. Their story is one of survival not in the margins but at the core, an unbroken continuity from the planet's beginnings to the present day. Modern science has begun to uncover just how vast the microbial tree truly is. Advances in genetic sequencing allow researchers to study microbial DNA directly from environments, bypassing the need to culture organisms in the lab. This has revealed entire lineages of microbes previously unknown, hidden branches of the tree of life that expand our understanding of biodiversity. Many of these microbes resist cultivation, living in conditions difficult to reproduce artificially. Yet their genetic signatures reveal metabolic capabilities that continue to surprise us, from consuming methane to fixing carbon in novel ways. The microbial world remains one of the richest frontiers of discovery, its hidden branches still unfolding before us. The influence of microbes extends beyond Earth, inspiring questions about life in the universe. Because microbes thrive in extremes of heat, cold, radiation, and chemistry, they serve as models for what might be possible elsewhere. On icy moons like Europa or Enceladus, with oceans hidden beneath frozen crusts, microbial life may exist, surviving on chemical energy from hydrothermal vents. On Mars, ancient riverbeds and signs of methane hint at the possibility of microbial life past or present. If life exists beyond Earth, it may not take the form of animals or plants but of microbes, the hidden majority that thrives wherever conditions allow. For humans, microbes are both partners and challenges. While most are beneficial or harmless, some cause disease, reminding us of their power in both positive and negative ways. Yet even pathogenic microbes are part of the larger story of life, evolving in response to their hosts, shaping immune systems, and participating in the ongoing branching of the tree. They are not separate from life's narrative but woven into it, reminders that no branch exists without connection to others. To reflect on microbes is to shift perspective. The grandeur of forests, the beauty of animals, the complexity of fungi, all these are real and significant, yet they are only part of the story. Beneath them lies the vast, unseen foundation, the microbial majority that sustains, shapes, and connects all life. They are the quiet architects of atmosphere and soil, the hidden partners within bodies, the explorers of extremes, and the survivors of ages. The tree of life is not primarily about the visible canopy, but about the roots and trunk, the microbial branches that spread wide and deep, holding everything else in place. And so, the story of microbes is the story of life itself. They remind us that what is small is not insignificant, that the unseen often carries the greatest weight, and that the hidden majority is the true foundation of existence. To contemplate them is to recognize that the tree of life is vast beyond sight, with most of its branches invisible to our eyes, but essential to the whole. Microbes are the roots and the endless branches, the hidden weave of life's fabric, upon which all visible forms depend. 15. Plants and the green world. Among the great branches of the tree of life, few have reshaped the planet so profoundly as the plants. They are the green foundation upon which nearly all visible ecosystems rest, the quiet engineers of air, soil, and climate. To contemplate plants is to reflect on the patient builders of the biosphere, beings that, without haste or noise, transformed a barren world into one rich with oxygen, forests, fields, and the conditions that sustain animals, fungi, and ultimately ourselves. Their story is one of persistence and innovation, a tale of sunlight captured, carbon fixed, and landscapes remade through countless generations. The origins of plants lie in the waters of ancient Earth, long before continents were covered in green. The first photosynthetic organisms were not plants at all, but microbes, cyanobacteria, that learned to capture sunlight and release oxygen. Over time, some single-celled eukaryotes acquired symbiotic partners, engulfing photosynthetic bacteria that became chloroplasts, the green organelles at the heart of every plant cell. This endosymbiotic event was one of the pivotal moments in evolution, for it gave rise to algae, the ancestors of all modern plants. These early algae filled oceans and lakes with green abundance, producing oxygen and forming the base of aquatic food webs. They remind us that the plant lineage began not on land but in the sea, where sunlight penetrated water and life reached upward to capture its energy. The Great Leap came when plants colonized land, around 500 million years ago. Before this, the continents were barren, shaped only by rock, wind, and shallow soils. As small algae-like plants began to creep onto damp shores, they faced new challenges. The risk of drying out, the need for support without the buoyancy of water, and the difficulty of reproducing in air. Through gradual adaptation, they evolved solutions. Waxy coatings protected their tissues from desiccation. Roots and vascular tissues drew water from soil, and lignin strengthened their stems, allowing them to stand upright. These innovations marked the beginning of terrestrial ecosystems, with mosses, ferns, and eventually seed plants spreading across the continents. The once barren land became a living world, clothed in green. Plants altered the planet in fundamental ways. By absorbing carbon dioxide during photosynthesis and releasing oxygen, they transformed the atmosphere, enriching it with the oxygen that animals would later breathe. Their roots weathered rocks, breaking them down into soil, while their fallen leaves enriched the ground with organic matter. In forests, plants created microclimates, cooling the air and cycling water through transpiration. Their growth provided habitats for countless other organisms, from microbes in the soil to insects in the canopy. Without plants, land ecosystems as we know them would not exist. They are the foundation of terrestrial life, shaping not only the physical environment, but also the possibilities for other lineages. The diversity of plants is astonishing, reflecting hundreds of millions of years of adaptation. Mosses and liverworts, among the earliest land plants, still cling to damp places, reminders of the transition from water to land. Ferns, with their graceful fronds, recall ancient forests that once covered the earth in the Carboniferous period, laying down the coal that fuels industries today. Gymnosperms, such as conifers, evolved seeds that could endure harsh conditions, spreading across cold and dry landscapes. Later, angiosperms, the flowering plants, emerged, revolutionizing reproduction with flowers and fruits. These innovations allowed them to form intricate partnerships with animals, from insects that pollinate blossoms to birds and mammals that disperse seeds. The flowering plants diversified rapidly, becoming the dominant group in most ecosystems, from grasslands to rainforests. Plants are not merely passive providers but active participants in ecosystems. Through chemical signals, they communicate with one another and with other organisms. Roots exude compounds that attract symbiotic fungi and bacteria, forming partnerships that aid in nutrient uptake. Leaves release scents when attacked by herbivores, warning nearby plants or attracting predators of the attackers. Some plants even engage in subtle strategies of defense and deception, producing toxins to deter grazers, mimicking the appearance of stones to avoid notice, or luring pollinators with the false promise of nectar. Though they do not move in the way animals do, plants are deeply dynamic, responding to light, gravity, touch, and threats with intricate biochemical systems. The importance of plants extends to nearly every aspect of human life. They provide food, clothing, shelter, and medicine, sustaining societies as they have since the dawn of agriculture. Cereals like wheat, rice, and maize feed billions, while fruits and vegetables provide essential nutrients. Trees supply timber for building, fibers for weaving, and compounds for healing. Even the oxygen we breathe is largely the gift of plants and their algal relatives. To recognize this dependence is to see that human civilization is not separate from the green world, but rooted within it. Every meal, every breath, every structure of wood carries the legacy of plants. Yet plants are more than resources. They are beings in their own right, intricate and adaptive, bound to the cycles of the earth. A forest is not only a collection of trees, but a community of countless plant species, each shaping and being shaped by its environment. A meadow is not just grass, but a dynamic interplay of roots, flowers, seeds, and soil. Even a single leaf, unfolding in spring, embodies millions of years of evolutionary history, its veins, pigments, and cells, the product of countless generations, adapting to light and air. To see plants in this way is to move beyond utility and to appreciate their intrinsic presence as part of the living world. The story of plants also extends into the future. As climates shift and environments change, plants face challenges of adaptation and resilience. Some species may decline, while others spread into new territories. Humans, too, influence this story, cultivating crops, conserving forests, and altering landscapes. The fate of plants is tied to our own, for their survival underpins our own continuity. To recognize this interdependence is to feel a sense of responsibility, a reminder that the green world is not merely a backdrop, but the stage upon which life unfolds. In contemplating plants and the green world, one is struck by the quietness of their power. They do not roar, run, or fly, yet they have transformed Earth more profoundly than any animal ever could. They turned rock into soil, air into breath, light into sustenance. They shaped the landscapes and climates, created the oxygen-rich atmosphere, and provided the base for food webs. They are the living fabric that covers the continents, the slow and steady builders of the world we inhabit. Their story is one of patience, endurance, and quiet transformation, written in leaves, stems, and roots across the face of the planet. And so, the branch of the tree of life that we call plants stands as one of the great pillars of existence. From their origins in ancient waters to their spread across the continents, they have shaped the earth into a living planet. They are both foundation and companion, sustaining life while embodying its creativity. To reflect on plants is to see the green thread that connects us to the past, sustains us in the present, and extends into the future. In their stillness lies strength, in their silence lies power, and in their presence lies the essence of life's unfolding story. 16. The world of fungi. Beneath the canopy of forests, within the soils of meadows, and even in the air we breathe, lies a hidden kingdom, one often overlooked yet essential to the balance of life. This is the world of fungi, a vast branch of the tree of life whose members are neither plants nor animals, but something uniquely their own. Their forms range from the familiar mushrooms that rise after rain, to the invisible threads woven through soil and wood, and to microscopic yeasts that ferment bread and drink. Though often subtle, fungi are the recyclers, the connectors, and the quiet alchemists of the biosphere. Without them, ecosystems would falter, for they dissolve what is dead and return it to the living. To contemplate fungi is to reflect on the unseen threads that bind the cycles of life together. Fungi differ from plants in that they do not capture sunlight through photosynthesis. Instead, they absorb nutrients from their surroundings, breaking down complex organic matter into simpler substances. To do this, they extend fine filaments called hyphae, which grow outward through soil, leaves, or decaying wood. These filaments form networks known as mycelium, often invisible but vast in scale. A single mycelial network may spread for miles underground, connecting roots, stones, and organic debris in a web of living threads. These networks are both absorptive and connective, dissolving nutrients and distributing them across the ecosystem. They are the hidden skeleton of life's recycling system, ensuring that the matter of the dead becomes nourishment for the living. The diversity of fungi is immense, ranging from the mushrooms we see above ground to molds, yeasts, and lichen-forming species. Each plays a role in the larger system of life. Yeasts, for instance, are single-celled fungi that ferment sugars into alcohol and carbon dioxide, a process humans have long used for bread, wine, and beer. Molds spread across surfaces, breaking down organic matter with quiet persistence. Lichens, partnerships between fungi and photosynthetic organisms like algae or cyanobacteria, colonize rocks, bark, and harsh environments, gradually transforming barren surfaces into habitats. Mushrooms, often the visible fruiting bodies of fungi, are but the reproductive structures of much larger hidden networks. In every form, fungi show adaptability, diversity, and quiet efficiency. One of the most remarkable roles of fungi lies in their partnerships with plants. Through mycorrhizal associations, fungi connect with plant roots, forming symbiotic relationships that benefit both partners. The fungi extend their hyphae into the soil, vastly increasing the plant's ability to absorb water and nutrients, especially phosphorus and nitrogen. In return, the plant provides the fungi with sugars produced through photosynthesis. This exchange is not limited to a single plant but often spans entire forests, with fungal networks linking trees together into a shared system. Nutrients and signals pass through these networks, allowing trees to support one another in times of stress, share resources with seedlings, and maintain collective health. In this way, fungi act as the communicators and connectors of ecosystems, turning forests into vast, living communities bound by underground threads. The role of fungi as decomposers is equally vital. They are among the few organisms capable of breaking down lignin, the tough material that strengthens plant cell walls. Without fungi, fallen trees and leaves would accumulate, locking away carbon and nutrients. Instead, fungi dissolve this material, returning it to the soil where it nourishes new growth. This recycling not only sustains ecosystems but also regulates Earth's carbon balance, influencing the global climate. The quiet work of fungi, invisible to most eyes, underlies the very possibility of renewal in nature. Fungi are also masters of resilience. They thrive in diverse environments, from damp forest floors to deserts, from the frozen tundra to the interiors of other living beings. Some are parasites, drawing sustenance from plants, animals, or even other fungi. Others are mutualists, forming beneficial partnerships that enhance the survival of both partners. Their spores, microscopic and lightweight, spread through air and water, enabling fungi to colonize new spaces quickly. These spores can remain dormant until conditions are favorable, allowing fungi to endure long periods of hardship. The resilience of fungi ensures their continual presence, adapting to change and seeding life cycles wherever opportunity arises. In human culture, fungi have long held significance. Edible mushrooms provide nourishment, while others contain medicinal compounds. Penicillin, the first widely used antibiotic, was derived from a mold, revolutionizing medicine and saving countless lives. Other fungi produce substances with profound effects on the human mind, shaping rituals and cultures across history. Yeasts remain central to baking, brewing, and winemaking, transforming simple grains and fruits into staples in celebrations. At the same time, fungi can be destructive, causing disease in crops, trees. This duality, nourisher and destroyer, healer and pathogen, reflects the complexity of fungi's role in the living world. Fungi also remind us of the deep unity within the tree of life. Genetic studies reveal that fungi are more closely related to animals than to plants, sharing a common ancestor that diverged hundreds of millions of years ago. This closeness explains similarities in certain biochemical pathways, such as the storage of energy as glycogen rather than starch. In this sense, fungi are kin to us, distant relatives that reveal the branching paths of evolution. To recognize this kinship is to feel the interwoven nature of life, where even the hidden threads beneath the soil are linked to our own lineage. The ecological influence of fungi extends beyond their roles in decomposition and symbiosis. They shape landscapes by binding soils, breaking down rocks, and influencing the distribution of nutrients. In some ecosystems, fungal networks determine which plants can thrive, shaping the structure of entire communities. They also participate in carbon storage, influencing the balance of greenhouse gases in the atmosphere. Their influence is quiet but immense, a reminder that power does not always reside in visibility. To walk in a forest is to move through a world deeply shaped by fungi, though their presence may not be seen. The soil beneath one's feet is alive with mycelium, the fallen leaves dissolving under the patient work of decomposers, the trees connected by networks of exchange. The mushrooms that rise after rain are but brief appearances, fruiting bodies, revealing the larger, hidden organism below. To sense this is to feel the forest not as a collection of individuals, but as a single, interconnected whole, bound together by the unseen threads of fungi. The story of fungi is a story of connection, resilience, and transformation. They remind us that life is not only about growth but also about decay, not only about creation but also about renewal. They show that the cycles of life depend on hidden work, that the invisible often sustains the visible, and that networks of cooperation underlie even the quietest corners of existence. In their networks, their partnerships, and their recycling, fungi embody the essence of balance within the tree of life. And so, the kingdom of fungi holds its place as a great branch of the tree, equal in importance to animals and plants. Though less often seen, they are the unseen weavers, dissolvers, and connectors, shaping ecosystems from beneath. They are reminders that the foundation of life often lies out of sight, in the quiet persistence of hidden threads. To contemplate fungi is to glimpse the deeper fabric of life, the silent web that sustains the living world, and the profound truth that what lies beneath often supports all that rises above. 17. The animal kingdom. Among the branches of the tree of life, the animal kingdom is perhaps the most familiar to us, for it is here that humans reside. Yet, even beyond our own species, animals surround us in every landscape, from the depths of the oceans to the heights of the mountains, from forests and grasslands to deserts and polar ice. They are beings of motion, sensation, and interaction, distinguished by their ability to move with intent and to sense their surroundings in complex ways. The story of the animal kingdom is the story of diversity shaped through movement and perception, of countless forms adapting to environments across hundreds of millions of years. To contemplate animals is to witness the flowering of life into a kaleidoscope of bodies and behaviors, each a living expression of the branching patterns of evolution. The origins of animals trace back more than 600 million years to seas filled with simple multicellular organisms. The earliest animals were likely soft-bodied, leaving few fossils behind, but molecular evidence suggests their presence long before the Cambrian period. Sponges, among the most ancient of animal lineages, reveal what these beginnings may have been like. Organisms without nerves, muscles, or true tissues, filtering water through porous bodies to extract nutrients. From such simple origins, new lineages arose, developing tissues, muscles, and nervous systems that allowed more complex movement and interaction with the environment. The Cambrian explosion, around 540 million years ago, marked a period of extraordinary diversification, with many major animal groups appearing in the fossil record in a relatively short span of time. Animals are united by several key traits. Unlike plants and fungi, they consume other organisms for energy, relying on food chains that ultimately trace back to photosynthesis. They lack rigid cell walls, which allows their cells flexibility in forming tissues and organs. Most possess specialized tissues, including nerves and muscles, which enable coordinated movement and sensation. Reproduction is typically sexual, with genetic material combined from two parents, though many variations exist. These shared features define the animal kingdom. Yet, within this unity lies immense diversity, from tiny plankton drifting in oceans to massive whales roaming the seas. One of the defining features of animals is their nervous systems, which allow them to perceive and respond to the world with extraordinary nuance. Even simple animals possess sensory structures that detect light, chemicals, or movement, while more complex ones develop eyes, ears, and other organs of perception. Nervous systems coordinate these inputs, integrating them with muscles to produce behavior. This ability to sense and respond has driven animals into a vast range of ecological niches, shaping their interactions with plants, fungi, microbes, and one another. The dance of predator and prey, the migration of birds, the pollination of flowers by insects, all reflect the dynamism of animals in motion and perception. The diversity within the animal kingdom is immense. Invertebrates, animals without backbones, make up the majority of species. Arthropods, including insects, spiders, and crustaceans, are the most numerous. Their segmented bodies and exoskeletons, giving them adaptability and resilience. Mollusks, such as snails, octopuses, and clams, display remarkable variety, from shelled grazers to intelligent cephalopods with complex behaviors. Worms, cnidarians, echinoderms, and countless other groups populate soils, waters, and oceans. Vertebrates, though fewer in number, are perhaps more familiar. Fish, amphibians, reptiles, birds, and mammals. Each lineage carries its own adaptations, from the gills of fish to the feathers of birds, from the scales of reptiles to the warm-bloodedness of mammals. Together, they form a panorama of form and function, each shaped by evolution's branching pathways. The expansion of animals onto land was a turning point in their history. Around 360 million years ago, descendants of lobe-finned fish began to adapt to shallow waters, developing limbs and lungs that allowed them to explore terrestrial environments. Amphibians marked the first true step onto land, though they remained tied to water for reproduction. Reptiles, with shelled eggs and scaly skin, broke free of this dependence, spreading across continents and diversifying into dinosaurs, lizards, snakes, and turtles. Birds later evolved from feathered dinosaurs, taking to the skies, while mammals developed fur, milk, and complex social behaviors. Each step in this expansion opened new possibilities, filling ecosystems with creatures that moved, grazed, hunted, and soared. Animals have not only adapted to environments, but also shaped them. Grazing herds transform grasslands, coral reefs built by tiny polyps create vast marine ecosystems, and insect pollinators sustain flowering plants. Predators regulate prey populations, maintaining balance within ecosystems, while decomposers among animals, such as detritivores, recycle organic material. Even humans, as one branch of the animal tree, have profoundly altered ecosystems through agriculture, urbanization, and technology. The animal kingdom is not only shaped by the world but also reshapes it, its members both responding to and influencing their surroundings. The behaviors of animals reveal layers of complexity. Many species exhibit instincts finely tuned to survival, migrations that span continents, courtship rituals that ensure reproduction, hunting strategies that demonstrate cooperation. Some animals, such as primates, dolphins, and elephants, display intelligence, problem-solving, and social bonds that suggest rich inner lives. Communication occurs across countless forms, from the songs of birds to the dances of bees, from chemical signals in ants to the calls of whales. These behaviors reflect the deep role of animals as interactive beings, responding to and shaping one another's presence in ecosystems. For humans, animals hold a special place. They are companions, resources, symbols, and teachers. From the earliest domestication of dogs and livestock to the cultural significance of animals in myths and art, our relationship with them has been profound. They provide food, clothing, labor, and inspiration. Yet they also remind us of our own animal nature. We, too, are products of evolution, sharing ancestry with other mammals, birds, reptiles, and even distant invertebrates. To reflect on the animal kingdom is to see ourselves not as separate but as part of a larger lineage, kin to the creatures that walk, fly, and swim around us. The story of animals is also a story of resilience and change. They have survived mass extinctions, adapted to shifting climates, and filled new niches as old ones vanished. Their diversity is a testament to the branching of life, to the creativity of evolution in producing endless forms. They remind us that movement, perception, and interaction are as much parts of life as growth and reproduction, and that the tree of life flourishes not only in stillness but also in motion. To contemplate the animal kingdom is to see a living tapestry of bodies and behaviors woven across time and space. From the simplest sponges to the most complex mammals, animals embody the flowering of multicellularity into motion and sensation. They are not only branches of the tree of life, but also agents that shape its growth, influencing ecosystems, landscapes, and even one another's evolution. Their story is one of interaction, of the ceaseless dance between organism and environment, predator and prey, community and individual. And so, the animal kingdom stands as a testament to life's dynamism, a vast branch filled with forms of astonishing variety. It is the kingdom of motion, of perception, of relationships written into behavior and form. To reflect on animals is to see the tree of life in full animation, its branches moving, sensing, and shaping the world. In their diversity, we find connection. In their resilience, we see continuity. And in their presence, we glimpse our own place as one among many in the grand unfolding of life. 18. Humanity's branch. Among the countless twigs of the tree of life, one branch carries the story of our own species. Humanity is but a single lineage, a small extension of the animal kingdom, and yet it is the one through which we contemplate the entire tree itself. To reflect on humans within this great branching is to recognize both our uniqueness and our ordinariness, to see ourselves as extraordinary beings capable of thought and culture, and yet also as mammals shaped by the same processes of evolution as every other creature. Our place in the tree of life is not one of separation, but of connection, a twig among millions, rooted deeply in ancestry shared with all forms of life. The story of humanity begins with the primates, a group of mammals that arose around 65 million years ago. After the extinction of the non-avian dinosaurs, primates developed grasping hands, forward-facing eyes, and brains suited for complex perception and coordination. These traits allowed them to live in trees, navigating branches, and foraging with agility. From early primates came lineages that diversified into monkeys, apes, and eventually the hominins, the group most directly related to humans. Fossils reveal this unfolding history, showing gradual changes in posture, locomotion, and cranial capacity. Each step was a branching of evolution, narrowing the path that would eventually lead to us. Around 7 million years ago, in Africa, the lineage leading to humans diverged from that of chimpanzees and bonobos. Our closest living relatives, the earliest hominins, such as Sahelanthropus and Australopithecus, walked upright but still retained features suited for climbing trees. Over time, adaptations to bipedalism became more pronounced. Hips, knees, and feet evolved to support upright walking, freeing the hands for carrying and manipulating objects. This change in locomotion altered not only anatomy, but also behavior, opening possibilities for tool use and social cooperation. Walking upright became one of the defining traits of our lineage, setting us apart from our closest kin while still reflecting the shared ancestry we carry with them. The genus Homo appeared around 2.5 million years ago, marked by larger brains and more sophisticated tools. Homo habilis, often called handyman, made stone tools to cut meat and process plants. Later, Homo erectus spread beyond Africa, adapting to varied environments across Eurasia. They mastered fire, hunted cooperatively, and developed more advanced technologies. Their presence across continents shows the adaptability of our lineage, the ability to survive and thrive in diverse climates. From them, other species arose, including Homo neanderthalensis in Europe and Homo sapiens in Africa. Our own species, Homo sapiens, emerged around 300,000 years ago, carrying the legacy of all those who came before. The defining feature of humans is not only our anatomy but also our capacity for culture, language, and symbolic thought. While other animals communicate and cooperate, humans developed complex spoken languages, enabling the transmission of knowledge across generations. This ability allowed culture to accumulate, each generation building upon the achievements of the previous. Tools, art, rituals, and social structures emerged, transforming survival from a matter of instinct to a matter of shared knowledge. Cave paintings, carved figurines, and early musical instruments reveal the depth of human creativity tens of thousands of years ago, long before written history began. These cultural expressions remind us that humans are not merely biological beings, but also storytellers, meaning makers, and creators of symbolic worlds. Our place in the tree of life is both humble and remarkable. On the one hand, we are animals, sharing over 98% of our DNA with chimpanzees, and even more with other mammals. Our bodies function with the same cells, proteins, and metabolic pathways as those of all living beings. We breathe oxygen produced by plants, digest food with the aid of microbes, and rely on ecosystems maintained by countless other species. We are dependent, interconnected, and continuous with the life around us. On the other hand, humans have developed capacities that shape the world in unprecedented ways. Through language, technology, and culture, we have altered landscapes, domesticated plants and animals, and built societies that span the globe. This duality defines our branch, deeply connected to the rest of life, yet uniquely able to reflect upon it. The evolutionary history of humans also reveals the complexity of ancestry. For much of the 20th century, humans were depicted as the pinnacle of a straight line of progression, rising from primitive ancestors to modern beings. But the reality is more intricate. The human lineage is not a single line but a branching bush, with multiple hominin species existing at the same time. Neanderthals in Europe, Denisovans in Asia, and other hominins overlapped with early Homo sapiens. Evidence shows that these lineages sometimes interbred, leaving traces of their DNA in modern humans. This interwoven ancestry reminds us that evolution is not a march toward perfection but a branching process, full of diversity, interaction, and mingling. Our species has since spread to every continent, adapting to deserts, tundras, rainforests, and islands. We have developed agriculture, cities, and technologies that extend our influence across the globe. Yet despite these achievements, we remain subject to the same forces as all life. Our bodies carry the marks of our evolutionary past. Spines adapted for four-legged ancestors, that now bear the strain of upright posture, wisdom teeth reflecting dietary shifts, and vestigial muscles and structures inherited from distant forms. These remnants remind us that we are products of history, shaped by the same processes as all living beings. To contemplate humanity's branch is to embrace both kinship and humility. We are not separate from the tree of life, but one of its twigs, connected to every other branch through deep ancestry. Our uniqueness lies not in separation, but in continuity, not in rising above, but in carrying forward the shared heritage of life. The animals, plants, fungi, bacteria, and archaea are not distant others but relatives, sharing the same ancient roots. The tree of life does not place us at its center or its top, but among its countless branches, part of a whole that is far greater than ourselves. At the same time, our capacity for reflection gives us a special role. We can see the tree, study its branches. We can recognize our dependence on ecosystems and the delicate balance that sustains them. We can feel wonder at our connection to other beings and a sense of responsibility for their preservation. This awareness is itself an expression of evolution, a trait that arose within one lineage, but that allows us to perceive the unity of all. To know our place in the tree of life is to see that our story is inseparable from the story of life as a whole. And so, humanity's branch is both small and significant. It is small because we are one species among millions, our time on Earth brief compared to the billions of years of life's history. It is significant because we are the branch that reflects, that contemplates the whole, that carries the awareness of kinship and continuity. To reflect on our place is to feel humility before the vastness of life and gratitude for the connections that bind us to it. We are not the crown of the tree, but one of its leaves, sustained by roots that reach into the deep past, part of a living whole that stretches across time and space. 19. Interconnectedness of all life. When we look upon the tree of life, it is easy to imagine its branches as separate, each species following its own path, each lineage distinct and apart. Yet this impression of division fades when we look more deeply. For the truth is that all life is bound together in networks of exchange and dependence. The leaves and twigs may seem isolated, but beneath them lies a unity of roots, a shared ancestry, and an ongoing web of interaction. The interconnectedness of all life is one of the great truths of biology, revealed in the cycles of nature, in the shared molecules of cells, and in the symbiotic relationships that weave together the fabric of ecosystems. To contemplate this interconnectedness is to see the tree of life not as a collection of parts, but as a living whole, a single great organism spanning the earth. At the molecular level, the unity of life is unmistakable. Every cell, from the simplest bacterium to the most complex human neuron, relies on the same molecule's DNA to store information, proteins to carry out functions, lipids to form membranes, and carbohydrates to provide energy. The genetic code is nearly universal, so that the instructions written in one species can often be read in another. This deep similarity reflects shared ancestry, the inheritance of life's blueprint from a common origin billions of years ago. In every living being, the same fundamental processes repeat: the copying of DNA, the transcription into RNA, the translation into proteins. These processes are not merely similar, they are the same, evidence of the unbroken continuity that binds all organisms together. Beyond molecules, the interconnectedness of life unfolds in the cycles of matter and energy that flow through ecosystems. Plants capture sunlight, transforming its energy into chemical form, which animals then consume. Fungi decompose, and microbes recycle. Carbon, nitrogen, oxygen, and water move in loops, passing from one organism to another, ensuring that resources are never static but always in circulation. A molecule of carbon taken in by a leaf may, within years, become part of an animal's body, then part of the soil, then part of the atmosphere, before returning again to plants. In this way, all organisms participate in a shared rhythm, exchanging materials across time and space. Life is not a series of separate beings, but a single network of exchange, a global system of interdependence. Symbiosis provides some of the most vivid examples of interconnectedness. Many plants live in partnership with fungi, exchanging sugars for minerals through mycorrhizal networks. Corals build reefs through their relationships with photosynthetic algae, which provide them with energy. Animals rely on microbes within their bodies to digest food, synthesize vitamins, and regulate immunity. These relationships are not rare exceptions, but fundamental aspects of life. Even within our own cells, mitochondria and chloroplasts bear witness to ancient symbioses, remnants of free-living bacteria that merged with other cells to form eukaryotic life. From the microscopic to the macroscopic, symbiosis reveals that survival is rarely solitary, but usually shared. The interconnectedness of life is also evident in food webs, the intricate networks of who eats whom in an ecosystem. A single insect may feed on a leaf, be eaten by a bird, and in turn become prey for a larger predator. When the predator dies, decomposers return its nutrients to the soil, where plants once again take them up. Each link is connected to countless others, so that the removal of one species can ripple through the entire system. The extinction of a pollinator, for example, may affect the plants it serves, the animals that eat those plants, and the predators that feed on those animals. These connections remind us that no species exists in isolation, and that the health of one depends on the health of many. Humans, too, are part of this web, though we often imagine ourselves apart from it. We breathe oxygen produced by plants and algae, eat foods grown in soil enriched by microbes and fungi, and rely on pollinators for much of our agriculture. Our bodies themselves are ecosystems, hosting trillions of bacteria, archaea, and fungi that are essential to our survival. Even our actions, intentional or not, ripple outward into ecosystems, influencing the lives of countless other beings. To understand our interconnectedness is to recognize that our well-being is inseparable from the well-being of the larger living world. The interconnectedness of life is not only ecological but evolutionary. Every branching point on the tree of life represents a shared ancestor, a moment when one lineage split into two, yet retained the common heritage of the trunk. We share ancestry with apes, with mammals, with reptiles, with fish, with the earliest microbes. The molecules within our cells, the structures of our bodies, and the processes of our physiology are echoes of ancestors long past. The tree of life is not a collection of separate origins, but a single origin branching into many. Each organism carries the history of life within it, a record of descent that links it to all others. This interconnectedness carries both beauty and responsibility. Beauty, because it reveals that we are never alone, but always part of a vast web that extends through forests, oceans, soils, and skies. Responsibility, because the threads that connect us also mean that our actions affect the whole. The destruction of habitats, the alteration of climate, the extinction of species, all reverberate through the web, changing not only distant beings, but eventually ourselves. To recognize interconnectedness is to see that caring for other forms of life is not charity but self-preservation. For the tree sustains us as much as we sustain it. In quieter ways, the interconnectedness of life is reflected in patterns of harmony and cooperation. Forests thrive not only because of individual trees, but because of networks of exchange beneath the soil. Oceans bloom with plankton that both compete and cooperate in cycles of abundance. Even microbial communities in soil or within our bodies are examples of cooperation, balancing competition with mutual support. The tree grows not only through branching but through intertwining, the threads of life weaving together into a living tapestry. To contemplate the interconnectedness of all life is to shift perspective, Instead of seeing species as separate, we begin to see them as nodes in a vast network, each depending on others, each shaping and shaped by the whole. Instead of seeing ourselves as isolated individuals, we see ourselves as part of a greater organism, a leaf on a tree, nourished by its roots, connected to its trunk, and joined to countless other leaves by the same living structure. In this vision, the tree of life is not only a metaphor but a reality, a single living system in which all beings participate. And so, the interconnectedness of life is the essence of the tree itself. It is the unseen web that binds molecules, species, and ecosystems into a coherent whole. It is the continuity of ancestry, the cycles of matter, the symbioses of survival, and the unity of diversity. To recognize it is to feel wonder at the depth of our connections and humility at our dependence upon them. In every breath of air, every sip of water, every bite of food, we participate in this great web. We are not separate from the tree of life, but entirely within it, bound by threads that stretch across time and space, weaving all living beings into one. 20. Reflections on the tree of life. As we come to the final part of this journey, we pause to look back at the great tree of life as a whole. We have wandered among its roots, traced its trunk, followed its branches, and gazed upon its countless leaves. Along the way, we have seen the quiet origins of life in the simplest of cells, the rise of bacteria and archaea, the flowering of plants and fungi, the motion and sensation of animals, and finally, the small twig of humanity. Each part of the tree carries its own story, yet none stands alone. They are joined together in continuity, bound by ancestry, sustained by cycles, and woven into a single living whole. To reflect upon the tree of life is to contemplate both its vastness and its intimacy, its endless diversity, and its profound unity. The tree's roots reach back more than 3.5 billion years, to the first cells that learned to copy themselves and harvest energy. From this beginning, all life has descended, carrying the same fundamental molecules, the same genetic code, the same cellular architecture. These roots remind us that, however different organisms may appear, they are united by a common origin. A bacterium and a whale, a fungus and a human, all are kin, sharing the same ancient beginnings. The roots hold the memory of that unity, anchoring the tree in the depths of time, feeding every branch with continuity. The trunk represents the great divisions of life, the three domains of bacteria, archaea, and eukaryotes. From this trunk, the tree branches outward, each division spreading into countless forms. Though we see these as separate, the trunk reveals their shared structure, their place within one organism of existence. It is a reminder that diversity does not imply disconnection, but rather growth from a single foundation. The trunk is the backbone of the tree, steady and central, a silent witness to billions of years of change. The branches stretch outward in every direction, representing the myriad lineages that have flourished and continue to flourish. Some branches remain small, their forms unchanged for millions of years, like living fossils of stability. Others burst with new twigs, diversifying rapidly into countless species. Some branches have been pruned by extinction, their forms remembered only in fossils and in the traces of DNA left in other lineages. Yet even the branches that have ended contributed to the shape of the whole, leaving space for new growth, influencing the paths of those that followed. The branches are evolution's handwriting, a record of life's creativity inscribed in form after form. The leaves are the living beings of today, the countless species that cover the tree at this very moment. Each leaf is unique, shaped by ancestry and environment, yet all are connected through the branches, the trunk, and the roots. The leaves shimmer in the present, alive with energy, but they are also temporary, destined to fall and return their matter to the cycle. New leaves will take their place, carrying the continuity of the branch forward. To look upon the leaves is to see life as it is now, diverse and vibrant, but also fleeting and ever renewed. In this great vision, humans appear as but one leaf, or perhaps one twig, on a single branch of the tree. We are not the crown, nor the pinnacle, but part of the whole. Our uniqueness lies not in separation, but in our ability to see the tree, to contemplate it, to understand in part the story of which we are a part. This awareness is both humbling and profound. It shows us that our lives are inseparable from the larger fabric of existence, that our survival depends on the health of the tree, and that our story is woven into the same tapestry as all others. The tree of life is not only a structure of ancestry, but also a living system of interconnectedness. The cycles of matter and energy bind species together across time and space. The air we breathe is the gift of plants and microbes. The food we eat is grown in soils enriched by fungi and bacteria. The water we drink has passed through countless organisms before returning to us. Every breath, every sip, every bite is a participation in the larger whole. The tree is not only around us, but within us, its processes sustaining our bodies, its history written in our genes. To reflect on the tree of life is also to recognize its fragility. Branches can wither, leaves can fall, and roots can be strained. Extinctions remind us that life's diversity is not guaranteed, that the pruning of branches is part of the tree's history. Yet the tree also shows resilience, recovering after upheavals, growing new branches, renewing its leaves. In this balance of fragility and endurance lies a lesson. The tree is both strong and vulnerable, both ancient and ever new. Its continuation depends on the interdependence of all its parts, and on the care with which each branch sustains the whole. In quiet moments, one may imagine standing beneath this tree, gazing upward through its branches, watching the play of light on its leaves. The tree stretches beyond sight, its roots buried in the depths of time, its crown reaching into the future. Around it, all life moves in cycles of growth and decay, continuity and change. To stand there is to feel both small and connected, to sense the vastness of existence and one's place within it. The tree is not only a scientific model, but also a symbol of unity, a vision of life as one great organism of which we are all a part. And so, as we conclude this reflection, we return to the essence of the tree of life. It is the story of unity and diversity, of ancestry and adaptation, of connection and continuity. It reminds us that every organism is part of a shared history, every branch part of a shared structure, every life part of a shared web. It shows us that we are not separate but bound to all beings through roots that reach into the past and branches that extend into the future. To contemplate the tree is to see life not in fragments but as a whole, a living story still unfolding with every new leaf, every new branch, every new generation. The tree of life is still growing. New species arise, old ones vanish, and the branches continue to spread. We, too, are part of its growth, our actions shaping its future, our choices influencing its form. The tree will endure beyond us, just as it preceded us. But our place within it gives us both perspective and responsibility. We are part of its story, and through our awareness, we carry the ability to honor and sustain it. In the end, the tree of life is both fact and meditation, a biological reality and a symbol of unity. It teaches us that all life is kin, that all beings are connected, and that existence is a shared journey across time. To rest in this vision is to feel peace, a sense of belonging to something vast, ancient, and ongoing. The tree stands, and we stand within it, leaves among leaves, part of its living whole.